It's Sports by the Book at the South Point Studio. Here's Jeff Parles.
Welcome in Football Friday. How about this? Episode 60 for this fine program. How about that?
Really? You
Look, the fact that we made it past number one and I didn't get fired, I was very happy, Chris.
Yeah, well, I haven't been relieved of duty yet either, so that's kind of a good thing.
We're happy to be with you. Alex White will be joining us in a little bit. Of course, she has to get her picks in. Has to get the picks in for the contest. That's kind of
it's
a little important, isn't
that
it?
Girl won a contest.
Oh, I know.
So let's not poo-poo that.
No, hey, look, it's important. The last thing you want is be one of those people who doesn't get your picks in, and all of a sudden you lose because you missed the week.
She won $100,000.
Pretty good.
That ain't bad.
It's pretty good. Last year's last man standing in college football, of course, at the station's casinos across town. All right, Chris, a little bit different today because shorter college card, obviously. Yeah. Full, not even a full NFL card. A lot of teams. Why are so many teams on bye?
I don't know. I wish they had those buys taken care of a while ago. Certainly before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and you know what the goofy part about it is? There's buys next week, too.
I know.
How about that? The Commanders and who's the other team on bye? Well, the NFL did do us a favor. It's Arizona and Washington next week, so they did at least.
There go my Super Bowl futures.
Yeah, I mean, they did put two of the six bottom teams in the NFL on the late buys this year. You know what? Before we get into today, regular season's over.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we're into this championship week. When I walked into the property today, there were a ton of Oregon fans here. Ton.
Really? I saw a lot of Washington fans, too.
So there we go. So
a lot of them, yeah.
So I happened to see more Oregon fans. I saw a few Washington fans.
Yeah. I saw more Washington fans.
So there you go. This is going to be split down the middle tonight. I really do think
so.
They're at Allegiant
You're going
Stadium.
to the game, right?
I will be there.
You're going to the last Pac-12 game ever.
I am. You know what? Actually, Ryan, do we have it? Do you have it? Okay. Well, Ryan did something special for the end of the Pac-12 for us today. So.
I got to tell you, it was a Pac-8 when I first started following it. But, when these teams were – I was just going to say we had USC and, I'm going to go very briefly here. They did a lot to change football in the SEC when they went into Alabama. I want to say 1967. It might have been 1968. And Bama was, I think, early season #1 team in the country. USC went in there and kicked their ass. And they had a black quarterback with a lot of other black players on that team. And Bear Bryant went to Alabama first. Says, I can't compete on a national level unless you let me get some of these black guys in here. And, of course, they let him do that. And that opened it up for the SEC, but not only for football and basketball, but, it really had a lot to do with integration. I can't judge the heart of Bear Bryant. I don't know about that. But I can judge the results of what he did. And what he did really kind of opened the door for integration in the South.
100%. Again, it's amazing. And again, it doesn't feel like it's that long ago. But
I remember watching the game.
I mean, 60 years ago. I mean, obviously, it was a whole different.
But the Pac-8, that was like in the California teams, they were very progressive, and
it was what USC, UCLA, Cal,
Stanford. God, what was the 8? I guess it was Washington and Oregon. And I guess Washington State and Oregon State, because the Arizona teams weren't in it yet.
Yeah, where were the Arizona teams?
They were in either the Big Sky or the WAC. I want to say the WAC.
Oh, lovely, nice.
Yeah.
There we go. Again, this whole new thing. There it is, the tribute that our guy Ryan McCormick put together today. Of course,
what's
the ending of one of, in all honesty, the movie that I associate the most with the end of my childhood. I was a senior in high school when Toy Story 3 came out. And here you go.
You were in high school for Toy Story 3?
Yeah. Oh, Toy Story 3 was 2011 or 2010. Excuse me, the end of 2010. Yeah.
Is it that long ago?
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, if you ask me what year Toy Story 4 came out, I have absolutely no idea. But regardless, apparently they're doing a fifth one, which I know everyone in the back loves for that. All right.
I love the Toy Story
They're great movies.
They're
great. Most Pixar movies are great movies. All right. Before we get to tonight, though, just the regular season at large, since we're through it. Obviously, great handle all the way through.
Fantastic.
And just yet another year of just spectacular business for college football betting.
Yeah. Our win wasn't great.
Okay.
But the handle, and I talked to Kaluch just this morning. His handle's way up too. So our handle's gone way up. They're under our umbrella. Handle's way up. The win wasn't great, but I've talked to a couple guys around town. It's been listen, bookmakers, we're known for crying. It wasn't that bad, believe me, but it just wasn't up to what we made last year. But the handle was fantastic, and we'll be fine.
It was an interesting year across the board football-wise, and again, we still have amazingly a third of the NFL regular season to go.
Yeah.
Plus the playoffs. This has been a better year for the public. It just the way that it has. There are a lot of sharp bettors that are not having as good of years as they would normally.
It's not
hope.
the wise guys that beat us. It was the general public.
Yeah, no, your worst weeks have been the week that the public just lined up and took their shot.
I'm looking. This is one of the worst years for parlay cards that we've ever had, and that's the general public.
Right. Well, it's again, sometimes it happens.
Yeah.
And just remember, and just throwing this out there because there's a lot of people out there in the space that are like, oh, never bet with the public. Hey, the public still got to win their fair share of bets, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And by the way, and seriously, I've been doing this started in '79, so this is 44. This is my 44th year. The public today is much more educated.
Oh, definitely.
Than what they were back in the '70s and '80s. They know not to bet a 30-point favorite to the under. They know not to tease 14-point favorites in the NFL. All that kind of stuff. They know not to do that. So today's public is much more educated than the public of the past. So don't just automatically, and I know there's one guy, and I love the guy. He's actually passed away now, but I love him. He says, I'll never bet a favorite. I said, you automatically start by eliminating 50% of the winners on the board because it's about a 50-50 split.
Right.
This is you only bet dogs. That's just not a rational way to handicap. There's some of the favorites. There's value in betting the favorites at times.
Yeah, and again, they like you said, pretty close to a 50-50 split.
About that.
And I've said this for a few years, but this year especially. Like again, the public. It's not automatic that the public is going to lose every bet. There's sharp action on every game, and as you've said, there's no sharp union. There's no wise guy. There's
union.
No wise guy union. Excuse me. Where there's no. Hey, look, some of the wise guys like the Ducks tonight. Some of them like the Huskies.
That's the guys who ask me. Who are the wise guys? Well, what's his number? At 8.5 and 9, I've probably did more wise guy business on the favorite. At 10, the wise guys bet the dog. What's the number? Right now we're 9.5. We're right in the middle. So
so let's go to it.
Looks like a good number
tonight. First in the rotation number is the game here, just a little due north at Allegiant Stadium. The Ducks and the Huskies for one last time. The Pac-12 takes center stage. The winner of this one almost assuredly going to the college football playoff. Washington wins. We know they're going. Oregon, there could be some stupid, silly business, but it would be, to me, just totally wrong if the Ducks are not there when this is announced on Sunday morning here on the West Coast. But, Chris, these teams met in Seattle about 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Epic game, 36-33. Washington won it. Game went over. Game pushed most numbers. Closed 3 in that one with Washington. This is a different sort of toggler than that one back a few weeks ago in Seattle. This one's been toggling between 10 and 9.5 essentially the whole week. You opened it at the larger number of 10. We're sitting right now at 9.5 with the Ducks laying it against the Huskies.
Well, I didn't particularly love Oregon, but my numbers came to 10.
Okay.
So I figured I might as well open it what my numbers came to. And they took it, and I think they took us down as low as 9, and then they laid it back up. So right now, Jeff, I got tremendous business on this game. As long as it doesn't fall anywhere near the number, I think we're in pretty decent shape. Just to try to do a little bit of homework on these two teams. And you can see statistically since that game, not just in the final score results, but in some of the internal metrics, Washington has regressed a little bit, and Oregon has not. If anything, Oregon has, progressed, I guess it would be the word. They've gotten a little bit better if you look at their numbers. So I think Oregon is, deserving of being a 10-point favorite. So, I mean, I wouldn't rush to the window to lay 9.5, but I think the number's right there. And, Yeah, I just want to mention a friend of mine, Dave Bartu. Would you know who that is?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Up in the Pacific
good,
Northwest, one of the better numbers guys there is.
Great numbers guy.
Yeah.
And I've known Dave. I've never met Dave, but we've conversed and talked on the phone. And
fascinating human being.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He really is. And I told him, I said, Dave, I put out, I think Georgia would be a 1-point favorite over Oregon on a neutral field. Pretty much everybody out there is telling me I'm nuts. What do you think? He says, I got it a toss-up. If those two play, and I asked Dave, I said, you mind if I mention you on the show? He goes, no, absolutely, mention him. So I hope Dave's listening. Really, really smart guy, and as you said, a fascinating guy. And I like his judgment a lot. Now, listen, we've seen pick'em games where teams win by 30.
Sure.
So I mean that's not the thing. But I think right now, I think my number, and I'm going to stand by it. I think Georgia should be a 1-point favorite if they play Oregon, and that's if we open at that. I mean, if it opens 3 everywhere, I'm going to probably open 2.5. Just
right.
Why would
take the bet and go from there?
I'll take the number, the best number that I could get for myself. But we'll see. But I think I was glad to have Dave agree with me. So it made me feel better.
CFB Matrix on Twitter is Bartu's handle.
Yeah.
Again, Coach Effect is one of the things that he has put together.
Not just Coach Effect for head coaches, but he does a deep dive on all like coordinators and things like that. Like not just better than anybody, way better than anybody. He really understands where these coaches come from and what their credentials are and that sort of thing. So yeah, go follow CFB Matrix, Dave Bartu. A friend of mine that I've never met, but like I said, we've conversed 100 times.
So just looking at this game a little bit further here, we can go deeper dive on these games because we have just a handful as opposed to 60 of them that we sometimes have on these college football Saturdays. The first meeting between these two teams was as big of a coin flip as you're ever going to see. That game was dead even.
Went down to a final kick.
Dead even. If Oregon converts the 4th down on their next to last drive, the game is over. The Ducks win. There was no hoopla about, all the 4th down stuff from Lanning, which, again, I liked it at the time to go for it. End the game. Don't even let Penix get the ball. They don't get it. Penix drives them down, get the touchdown. And then, like you said, a missed makeable kick that would have given us overtime. And you and Vinny have both brought this up on the show where since then, these teams have trended the different ways.
They have.
Washington, even though they're higher in the rankings, and look, we know the committee's going to put the 12-0 team that beat the team that's 11-1 higher than that. But the Ducks have looked so much better than Washington has over the last 6 weeks. And I know there were some people that weren't following it this week that look at this number and be like, whoa, 9.5. I'm going to take Washington blind here because of just regular reasons. But with the way that these teams have played, I thought the 9.5 was the right number. I had no problem with the 10 being out there that you said at the beginning of the week. And that's part of the reason I'm going to the game with nothing in my pocket on this game pre-flop.
Yeah. Well, can you get connectivity and bet?
I can. I've been successsul getting stuff in an Allegiant.
Sometimes that's hard.
It's hard. It's harder at T-Mobile than Allegiant, actually.
Really?
Yeah, for whatever reason. I don't know why.
There's so many games, and Kenny White, who was on our show last week, he was, I don't know if I was eavesdropping, but he was talking to something about his daughter, Alex.
Of course.
And saying, there's, I don't know what the percentage is, he says, but you look at games, it's got to be 50, 60% of games could go either way with the number. And that's why you got to get the best of the number. But, like I said, there's there's pick'em games that one team wins by 30. Well, there's nothing you can do about that. But so many games just hang right in the balance and go right down to the end. And that Washington-Oregon game was one of those. Easily could have gone the other way. But I can understand the committee. And we don't make the rankings. We make the numbers. And, listen, they take the easy way out, and it's justifiable, and they don't have to deal with any crap. But it's just easier to make Washington higher in the rankings than Oregon.
Well, and again, if Washington wins tonight, guess what? They have not only earned the berth, they deserve it.
For sure.
They could very easily, get some weird stuff tomorrow, could move up. Could be, granted, there's no difference between the 2 or the 3, but maybe an easier or harder opponent depending on what ends up happening. But if the Ducks win, and we'll get into this as we go along, my assumption is if they win, they're going to be 3.
Yeah.
And Florida State, depending on what happens, Florida
Yeah.
State's not going to move off of number 4 if the Seminoles are going to the college football.
Yeah, let's
playoff.
assume Michigan wins.
Yeah, and then
there'll be one or two.
We'll get to the SEC game a little
okay.
later.
And the big, the big question mark is going to be what's going to happen in the SEC tournament, and if Bama wins, is Georgia out? And I think Bama has to be in if they win. But that's not a slam dunk either. They lost by 10, I think, early in the year to Texas. I don't know. Does the committee look at that or not? I wouldn't myself, but I'm not on the committee.
It'll be fascinating to see what ends up happening, especially again if Alabama beats Georgia. That's the one scenario that I know the committee doesn't want to see because then they really have to work.
Yeah.
If Georgia beats Alabama, Florida State wins out, wins their game. You know what? They can just hide behind. We're not keeping a 13-0 conference champion out. Sorry, Texas, you shouldn't have lost to Oklahoma in the Red River. Right. So, alas. All right, let's go to the other game tonight. This one starts at 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern. Hey, look, I would say throw out the record books usually when New Mexico State and Liberty do battle. But, hey, this is a CUSA championship game here, Chris. What an amazing job by Jerry Kill. We brought it up.
Man,
there's basically nothing going on in Las Cruces. This has been a horrible football program. Basically, its entire existence.
Basically, my whole life.
Yeah, its entire existence. And here they are winning at Auburn 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And now in the conference championship game against the Liberty team, Jimmy Chadwell, of course, took over for Hugh Freeze when he left for Auburn. Undefeated the Flames are this year. The open 12, bet down to as low as 10.5, which is where you sit right now. Did pop back to 11 after an initial go to 10.5. Total from 54 up the ladder to 57.5 on this one now.
Well, again, and I've been saying this for years, when you have your power ratings, it just gives you a place to start.
Sure.
And my power ratings came to 13, Liberty a 13-point favorite.
Okay.
But I got to tell you, the more I looked at this game, I think the dog has a hell of a chance here.
I agree with
winning outright. Jerry Kill, the guy was a terrific coach at Minnesota, and he had health issues that forced him, we thought, into retirement, but he took a sabbatical, whatever. And I think he was an assistant coach. I can't remember for who. He was doing some good work as an assistant coach, and he got hired here at New Mexico State. The man is a good football coach. And I got to tell you, like I said, even though my power ratings come higher, the more I look at this game, I kind of like the dog. I think they're going to hang in there all the way. And Liberty's pretty good. Liberty's been a very, very good team. It's been a good program for a couple years. I don't think much of the school itself, but we can get into that some other time.
Different argument for a different day.
Yeah, that's a different argument for a different day. But their football program is really, really good. And they came essentially from nowhere, Jeff, 5-6 years ago, something like that?
No, they weren't even FBS.
Yeah, they weren't that.
Yeah.
But, they were kind of like, like a BYU type school in a sense. But they've really done well with their football program. And if you're backing them this year, what's their record ATS? Do you have that? It's pretty good. I know that.
I did double check it, but I think it's 9-3.
Yeah, that's pretty good, Jeff.
Yeah.
So I think that they've been fine. So I have a lot of respect for the Liberty program. But like I said, the more I looked at this, I think New Mexico State has a really good chance of not just covering, but winning this game outright.
So just looking at it, Liberty so far this year actually gave them one extra, 8-4 against the number, but they've covered the last few, except for that UTEP game last week. But just looking at New Mexico State, I like Pavia. I think he's a lot of fun. Their quarterback, who's the only person to throw a pass with his helmet on backwards this year with that face mask. Going back to the first meeting with these two teams, they met all the way back on September 9th. So really early in the season, before New Mexico State really knew what they were.
Right.
Liberty won the game 33-17. If we look at yards per play, they're dead even. They're both at 6.8 yards per play. Now, here's the problem. Liberty ran 77 plays versus New Mexico State's 50. And New Mexico State lost the turnover battle -2 that day.
Yeah, you're not going to win.
You're not winning that game on the road if you're going -2 on a turnover differential and the opponent has 27 more plays than you. But the offensive production was there in that game for New Mexico State. They just continually got in their way. I was a little, Chris, I was a little bit surprised that this was and I know what your power rating said, coming in the whole 13. With the way that New Mexico State has played, especially over the last 6 weeks, I'm a little surprised that 12 was basically, you opened 12, it was mostly 12 in the market. I'm not surprised the bettors took it. I'm not surprised this has been a popular underdog, and I tend to agree with you. I don't know if they get there outright, but they have a great shot to pull this thing tonight. And boy, if they pull this thing, regardless, already an amazing job by Jerry Kill. Yeah. Even overkill at that point. If you win a CUSA championship game at New Mexico State, again, it's New Mexico. We have some amazing programs that are never in this spot.
Right.
Obviously, the one just in town in UNLV, one of them as well.
Yeah.
But New Mexico State's almost as ridiculous as UNLV hosting the Mountain West title game.
That's funny because they've had some good basketball programs over the years.
Both schools have. Yeah,
they really have. But I've always wondered why do some schools, why do they do so well in basketball and can't seem to find their way football? Kansas may have finally figured it out.
You can ask Kansas, you can ask Duke. I mean, you can ask
Kentucky. They're mediocre. But I really do like the chances of this team. I'm going real quick. I want to see what my money line is on this game. Because I think if I was out there playing, I'd take a little flyer on the money line. Plus 330.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's good.
I see a couple higher. Not much higher. But, I'm at, you got to move with your business.
Of course.
But I think if you're out there playing, New Mexico State on the money line might have a little bit of a show. There might be some value there.
Let's head to tomorrow.
Okay.
Texas wins. They at least will be alive going to tomorrow night.
Yeah.
If they lose, see you later.
Yeah.
Adios. You're done. They take on Oklahoma State, who somehow is there. Somehow. I just have to make sure I bring up the right person here on the tweets. But Oklahoma State was the luckiest, according to CFBstats.com.
Okay.
They were the luckiest team in college football this year. They were 4.2 wins above expectation.
Is that right?
Based off of post-game win expectancy. So that's a team that was expected to barely win 5, that won 9. And here they are in the Big 12 championship game. This team got blasted at home by South Alabama in September. And here we are. And you know what, Chris? I know this number opened at 12.5, and boy, that didn't take long for it to go right to 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. Oh, no. And that was one of those where I made the number 14.
Right.
So nothing crazy. Tried to stay a little bit ahead of it because I think when I opened at 13, I think it was still 12.5 around. So I tried to stay a little bit ahead of it. And one of my wise guys laid the 13. I said, geez, just go right to 14. Just go there. Skip 13.5. So we did, and that seems to be a smart move on my part because it's gone nothing but up since. Right now, I do need Oak State pretty good. But, Jeff, you talk about, and I've said, the mullet, he's not always my favorite guy. He really isn't. But if you look back, and since that blowout of South Alabama, and then they lost a close one to Iowa State, they've been on a roll. The only blemish, and you can almost understand it, is after they won the final Bedlam game. I'm sure those kids were reading their accolades all week. They're the greatest team in history.
Biggest clunkers of anyone the whole year. That game in Orlando.
They got massacred by Central Florida.
That was the in the last 20 years. That's the only time an unranked beat a ranked team by 40 plus. So
is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 45-3. I'm looking. Yeah, that's 40 plus. Yeah.
Yeah. And Oklahoma State. And again, credit to Gundy.
Absolutely.
This is not, other than Ollie Gordon, who is amazing running back. Doing some, again, I don't want to bring up Barry Sanders because that's not fair to Ollie Gordon.
It wouldn't be fair to Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, it wouldn't be fair to anyone. But I mean, Ollie Gordon was, for a running back, is basically the best running back seasons that weren't Barry Sanders for Oklahoma State. I mean, they were lucky to win last week. They were 17-point favorite against BYU. Yeah. And they needed a lot of things to go right to win that game in overtime, 40-34. They were in a 24-6 hole at halftime. And again, I know I missed the number, and I wish I had been on it when he opened and laid those good numbers earlier in the week. Texas is one of the teams that I think would benefit from style points this week. Mm-hmm. And there aren't many of those this week that would benefit from style points. So Texas gets up 21-0 quick. They're not going to take the foot off the gas pedal. They're just going to go, 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 go.
Yeah.
And if they win the game, and you know what? They're not going to care. They don't have to see Oklahoma State ever again because they're going to the SEC next year.
You're right. Yeah.
They don't have to see them again. So, like, who cares if you beat them 52-10 and Gundy's annoyed that you ran it up? They don't care. They just want to get as many style points as possible. I think Texas runs them out. I just don't see how Oklahoma State stays in this game unless, and this is always this thing with Texas, we didn't see it last week because they just ran Texas Tech out of the building in Austin. But you and I both know this. This Texas team, despite all that talent, is very much stupid enough to let Oklahoma State hang in this game with stupid turnovers, silly coaching decisions. They are more than capable of making this a game that doesn't necessarily need to be a game.
Well, I said I'm not a fan of the mullet of Gundy as a person, but he's done a really good job as a coach. Sarkisian, I have a lot of questions on him as a coach, an awful lot of them. And what you said, I think, is right. Now, listen, I made the number 14. I guess now that it's starting to climb up, I guess there's some 16s in the market. I would lean towards a dog, but again, not something I would really be looking to bet on. But I can tell you right now, I'm going to need Oak State when they kick off, barring something crazy.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Whatever happens. I think I'm okay with it. So.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Texas rolls. But we'll see. Again, if any of these big time teams are going to blow a ridiculous game, it would be the Horns. I don't think any of those other big teams can blow a big game like this. I want to get the MAC championship. Alex White will be joining us. Actually, Alex can join us on the desk right now.
Bring a water with you, Alex, while you come.
See, hockey.
I'm getting thirsty.
See, we're doing the hockey line change here in the middle of the segment. The MAC championship. Chris, Toledo is taking on Miami of Ohio. We saw this matchup already this year, and it was one where Toledo kind of, I don't want to say messed around, but it kind of felt like they did watching that game. Up 21-3 at halftime, had to sweat it out, won that game 21-17 on the road against Miami of Ohio. Now they do it again in Detroit. Currently at 7, Chris, with a 43.5 here.
I made this game a lot lower.
Okay.
I think it's going to be much, much closer. Boy, I didn't need that water. I was thinking more like a 3 even.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, much, much lower. Yeah. And I like Toledo. I like their program. I think they've had probably the best MAC program over, the past decade or so, maybe even further back than that. But I think it's going to be a close game. I thought, and again, I've tried to stay under the market on this game. I saw it as high as 8. I was using 7.5. It's gone down to 7.5. I went to 7. I see some 7 starting to pop up in the market. I haven't gone below that, but I think this is going to be a real tough game, and I would not lay a big price on Toledo, but that's kind of where I'm at with the market. But yeah, I definitely like the dog in this one.
That's interesting because again, Miami of Ohio. I still think if Ohio stays healthy, I still think the Bobcats would have won that division.
Yeah,
it's close.
I did too.
It's close, but Alex, we'll bring you in here. Again, we had this discussion a little bit earlier in the week on this game. Chris, obviously, also, too. This has been the classic toggler between 7 and 7.5 the whole week. But, again, I didn't bet this one. But what do you think here? Again, the Rockets laying 7, game in Detroit, MAC championship.
Well, I'm really happy to hear Chris say that because I haven't heard much about Miami, Ohio. But I did take the 7.5 with them, and I agree with him. I thought it was going to be lower. First game, Toledo won 21-17. And Miami, Ohio's defense is really good, especially their secondary. And, they're holding teams to 16 points a game, 7th best in the nation. So I think their defense can keep them in this game. I know they did lose their starting quarterback, but Avion Smith has done well for them, and he's made them more of a running team. So I think they'll be able to move the ball on the ground.
Miami, again, 7-point underdogs in this one. Total 43.5 as well, which is the second lowest total of the weekend because
the lowest out of real football.
Because Iowa's playing this weekend. That's the only reason it's the lowest total, second lowest total, and not the lowest this weekend. That MAC championship game always brings us something loony. There's always something silly that happens in that game, and we used to be on a Friday night, right? Now they moved it. Now they moved it to the noon Eastern kick. So Maybe a
It was
few more
nice to
eyeballs.
have the last man standing champion
Yeah, she's here.
agreeing with me.
Yeah, there we go.
And if she wins it again, we're going to have to call it the last woman standing. So how would you go with that? Would you be okay with that?
I would.
Okay, all right.
But
See
I'm
what we
not
can
in.
do.
I'm not in that one anymore. So
Oh, okay.
I still got a couple
You're
contacts.
going to rest
She
on
got-
your laurels. Okay, I don't blame you.
Good. We'll keep the Alex White flair here. Let's go to the game due north of here.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, the Allegiant Stadium double. Boise State, UNLV. Broncos staying here, right, Chris?
Yeah.
Broncos staying here on property. Big, nice banner by the valet in the front, welcoming everyone to town. Again, UNLV, 9 wins, almost 4 years worth of wins in 1 year, basically, for the Rebs, hosting the Mountain West title for the first time ever. Chris, Boise State is favored in this game, though. 2.5 right now at Allegiant Stadium, total 60. And we kind of had this discussion a little bit yesterday. This has been, for Boise State, they fired Avalos a month ago, and here they are. They are still the premier program in this conference.
Yeah.
And here they are still in a Mountain West title game, despite having a 7-win season at Boise State. The sky's falling on them, and they're still in the conference title game.
Well, I can remember Boise State used to be in the Big Sky, and they played Nevada, and I was at a playoff game one time. It was one of the best games. I think it was like 48-45, something like that. Nevada beat them. But they've gone to heights after that. They've gone, that were, I think it was still called Division II at the time. But anyway, they've gone from Division II to now. They, when they beat Oklahoma back in the, was it the Orange Bowl, I think? Fiesta Bowl. All those years. I think people really woke up to how good that program was. But they've fallen back a little bit this year, but they're obviously going to try to correct things by bringing in a new coach. But nonetheless, I made this game like a pick 'em. I gave UNLV maybe a little bit for a home field, not 1 maybe. And again, would I run to the counter and bet this? But I think if you bet UNLV on the money line, get a nice little plus. I think there's some value there. And, we've written really good business both ways. Well, with Boise staying here, there's no surprise we found some Boise money that is trickled into the counter. But, the Rebel fans, listen, they support their team when they win, and they've had a really good year. Steve Stallworth, who is a former quarterback at UNLV, loves to tease me because I told him Vince Lombardi couldn't win there, but apparently Barry Odom can, so good for him. But, we'll see what happens, but I think I like the game at Pick'em, and I thought UNLV plus either a few points, especially if you get to 3, or getting a decent money line is a decent play.
So I did jump in about mid-season when UNLV was doing really good and just took a little bit on 18-1. So I haven't hedged or anything with that. I'm just going to write it out, go into the game to support the Rebels, of course. I do like that UNLV is playing really good fundamental football. They're leading the Mountain West in third down conversions. Their kicker was named Mountain West Kicker of the Year. So their special teams is really good. They're doing all the little things right. So I think they'll hang in this one, and I'm hoping they can pull it off.
Yeah, they got to get lucky at the end of the game, but I think you could say the same thing for Boise. I think it's going to be a tight game. Yeah.
We've seen a lot of these Mountain West games the last few weeks come down to the end, right? And like field goal. So
if
close
you got
game.
the league best kicker, that's probably something that's pretty good.
Yeah, this. So total 60, by the way, on this. There's 60.5 on the in the market on this as well. You and I talked about this earlier in the week, Alex. I actually think what happened to UNLV last week helps them here. Where, all right, that's the get used to the lights game against San Jose State. You know what? You played 3 really bad quarters, started the comeback too late. Whatever that clock management was on the last drive was totally bizarre anyway. But I think getting that out of the way helps them this week. And I really don't think this Boise team's any good. I think they're really average. And for UNLV to get this game at home, I have no idea what that crowd will look like tomorrow, but hopefully there will be some scarlet and gray in there with UNLV hosting this thing for the first time, and it could be a while again before they host it again.
Boise usually travels well.
I saw a lot of blue in the hotel as well so far today. But I I think UNLV is going to win this game outright. This would be, forget the points, just take the price and go from there.
And get plus 120.
Yeah,
it's not a bad return. Better than laying 11 to 10.
Yeah, 100%. Especially in a game that I don't think is landing Boise by 2, Chris. I don't think it's landing. Hey,
it's got to land somewhere.
You can have triple overtime. You get it landed on 2.
Oh, yeah, right.
Since we got dueling 2-point conversions in OT. All right, let's go to a game we discussed a little bit yesterday. SMU, Tulane. So number 1 quarterback Preston Stone's out. Broken fibula, done for the year for SMU. Tulane going for their second consecutive New Year's Six Bowl game appearance. Of course, last year they were in the Cotton Bowl. That stunner coming from way back to beat USC in that one. Would probably be a trip to Atlanta in the Peach Bowl this year would be my guess if Tulane wins this game. Honestly, the winner of this game, period, should go to the Peach Bowl. I think SMU has done enough to justify being the highest-rated non-Power 5 team. Even if Liberty wins tonight, I think an 11-2 SMU should go over a 13-0 Liberty. But, Chris, you're down to 3.
Yeah.
Even with the backup quarterback for the Ponies in this one, Tulane laying it at home. Total 47 there at Ullman in New Orleans.
It's another game. I made it way lower. You know, we talked about it yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Opened 3.5. It jumped up to 6, and we did. I went along with the market too, because they do have a new quarterback at SMU, and the other kid, I can't remember his name, was really good. Had great
Preston Stone
had great numbers. But reading a lot from the SMU websites and that sort of thing, everybody loves this kid that's coming in. They have really high hopes. Now, what's he throwing, about 15, 20 passes all season?
What was it, Alex? 24?
24 passes all year. So this is a much, much bigger situation. We'll see how the kid responds. I mean, he is like 19 years old. You never know how a kid like that's going to respond. But they are very high on him. I've tried to stay on the SMU side of the market, and it's been to no avail. All the money has been on SMU. So apparently, the word is out, and a lot of people believe that this kid is a really, really good quarterback. Now, you got to give Willie Fritz and what he's done at Tulane a ton of credit. I mean, for years, they were one of the worst programs in the South. And now, again, they're knocking on the door to a second consecutive New Year's Day bowl game. It's a lot of credit to them for what they've done.
Before we get to Alex's play, one quick thing on Willie Fritz. There was a report out of Houston today that Fritz was going to be the next coach of the Cougars.
Oh, not Houston.
So I don't know how that works. And again, remember, that looked like it was going to be trailer from UTSA going, maybe something fell through. Kind of a weird situation with that potentially with Fritz. But Alex, we discussed this one a little bit yesterday as well.
Yeah, and I don't want to take anything away from Tulane because you're right, they are a very good program. But I did take the points with SMU, got them at 5. I think it's really going to rely on their defense and especially their secondary because Tulane's quarterback, Michael Pratt, very good, put up good numbers all year, but they do rely on him heavily in their passing game. So I think SMU's defense is very good and their secondary, and they can keep them in this game. They are 6th in the nation in allowed yards per pass attempt. So another close game I think we're going to have with the conference championship.
Again, the winner of this one really deserves to be in Atlanta, or maybe SMU gets sent to the Cotton Bowl. Again, SMU, just remember, actually, SMU Power 4 team next year because they're in the ACC next year.
I got to give our man Vinny credit.
Yes,
halfway through the
100%.
season, he told me, look out for this SMU team. They're really good. And I started following them since then. And, I've tried to be on their side quite a bit. And that's a good team. They really put up some numbers. And another program, and, you kids don't remember, back when they got the death penalty, and probably deserved it, I hate to say, because those guys are really blatant. Eric Dickerson was driving the nicest car in Texas, I think. And, so they were really pretty blatant in what they were doing. But nonetheless, they've come back from that death penalty, and now they'll be a Power 4 team. And ACC, you better look out. This team's pretty darn good.
Well, in a conference that Florida State it will still be a top-notch team.
Sure.
Clemson, you anticipate, will be better
Probably,
next year. Louisville, who knows? It could be just starting for Brom and company in Louisville.
Duke, unfortunately,
Duke
lost
is going to go
Elko.
backwards.
Yeah.
Elko, of course, going to A&M.
I don't blame him, but boy,
And Riley Leonard looks like he's going to be a Golden Domer also.
right.
In the triad, you just stay in the in the triad, right? Just who's the NC State quarterback next year? That's who's next on that, right?
Oh man, I'm telling you already. Matter of fact, I was texting with Bartu today, and he said he's trying to keep up with the assistant coaches, let alone with the players, who are transferring.
Let's go to the big one. Atlanta, Georgia, Alabama. We finally get it. Boy, the Tide were lucky last week, to put it politely. 4th and 31, and you end up with single coverage on their best wide receiver? How is that possible? A week later, I still don't know how Auburn managed to screw that up as badly as they did. And they did. Credit to Bama. They made the play when they had to, and they're 11-1. They're still alive, potentially into the college football playoff. Chris, Georgia, got to give the Dogs credit because there was a whole part of this year, Chris, where the Dogs look like, they're
very mediocre.
They're all right. They're clearly good, but they're not elite. They're not top. They might not even be in the top 5 in college football.
There was times I didn't have them in my top 5.
And to their credit, the last month they have turned it on.
Yeah, they're my number one. Right
yeah, and I agree with that. And they beat Missouri in that tight game. They blasted Ole Miss. They blasted Tennessee. That Georgia Tech team made no sense all year. So it made sense that game was tight for a lot longer than it needed to be. But here we are, Chris. Georgia's 5.5. It's where you opened it. Yeah. It did touch 6.
Yeah.
Total. It's funny how you moved all over the place, and you're basically where you opened right now. 55.5, all the way down to 53.5. Now back to 55. This is the one where the market is interesting in comparison. You are the market high at 5.5.
Yeah.
The rest of the market is mostly 5. There is also 4.5 right now in town as well.
Well, I told my guys, they'll tell me, hey, look, we're the high. I said, listen, when they bet us, we'll move it. What can I tell you? Right now, I think the number's about right. It's funny, though, Felica, and I know Chris is listening right now, but Chris put out that tweet of mine where I said all the, potential point spreads. Since then, and last I checked, it was 670,000 views. And I think almost every one of those 670,000 commented to me about one team or another with their flaws. But every team out here has flaws. You could look at, Bama, incredibly lucky to win last week. Incredibly lucky.
Oh, yeah.
Georgia, as we just talked about a minute ago, they had that middle of the season. They weren't very good. Struggled against Missouri, among others. They were like a good team for the first 2 months of the season. So every team out here has flaws, and you have to look at each game individually. I think this number's about right. I have no opinion, and I think I made the number 5, 5 or 6 either way. So we're right there. Like I said, when they bet me, I'll move it. But either way we go on this game, I got the 11-10 working for me, so I'll be fine either way, rooting wise.
I'm really torn on the total, and I want to get you guys' opinion because I did make it 50, and that would make this an underplay for me. But that really scares me with these two teams. I did take +3 for the first half with Bama, and that's because you mentioned it, Jeff. Missouri hung in there. They were tied at the half, and then Ole Miss 21-21 at the half. And even Georgia Tech was right in there, well, mostly the first quarter. But so I think Bama's going to stay in this, at least for the first half. I do think the number's right. That 6, kind of mad I missed that. But grab 3 with the first half. What do you guys feel about the total?
It's interesting. By the way, real quick on Georgia, again, they were losing at halftime to South Carolina earlier in the year. Mentioned that. Not a good team, Gamecocks. Auburn very easily could have have a win against Georgia, a win against Alabama, and then still had the blasting they took at the hands of New Mexico State 2 weeks ago. Hey, sure, college football makes a lot of sense, guys. But Alex, I don't have any opinion on this total because if you look through Alabama, Georgia in these conference championship games through the years, we've again even going back to that epic game where it was Aaron Murray on the Georgia side where they were the 2 best teams in the country that year, and Georgia just couldn't get the playoff at the goal line. That was a high-scoring game. 2 years ago, the year that Georgia won their first title when Bama smoked them in the SEC title game. That was a higher-scoring game as well, especially on the Bama side. But if Georgia's going to win this game and cover, I think this is an under game because I think their defense is going to be what carries them through in this game. Carson Beck has been vastly improved since the beginning of the year, but I think Georgia's got to rest on what has gotten them there the last 2 years, and that's the defense with multiple NFL players, multiple high NFL draft picks on it, and I think that's how, if Georgia covers this game, I would say this is an under game, but if Bama covers this game, anything's in play. Anything's in play with a Bama cover.
Well, Alex, I wish I could help you, but I'm not a very good totals guy. So you're kind of on your own. I really have no idea. So number sounds about right to me. I don't know what to tell you.
Right. And so to Jeff's point, in SEC championship games, 12 of the last 14 have gone over. So that was very alarming to me.
The only thing that I will say, because there are a lot, the SEC championship games, you either get these really tightly lined games or you get the monster favorite, because one half is always better than the other half. That's usually the way that it breaks down with this conference. Again, you had Alabama, Missouri, where Alabama was a huge favorite. Georgia was a huge favorite last year against LSU in the conference title game. When Tebow was there, Florida was big favorite. Like, it's an interesting mix for a conference that usually provides us with at worst, one of the three best teams in the country almost every year. These games normally, it's rare that these games are sub-7 just because usually it's the best team in one side just is way better than whoever comes out of the other side.
Yeah. I got to give you a quick story on this.
Please.
I can't remember what year it was.
Please.
But we had one customer of ours, big customer, played a lot with us.
Yeah.
Came in, and this was a playoff game, and I wish I could remember the year. And he bet us $400,000 on Alabama. That's a big bet. Was
this the national title game that they played?
Might have been the national title game.
Okay, so that was 2 years ago then.
$400,000.
Yeah.
So I got to go down and tell Michael, and hey, I took this bet, and you never know how that's going to go. And right as I walk in, so Michael, I could usually talk, but his longtime partner Frank could be kind of tough. And just as soon as I walked in there, I tell Michael, and as right as I'm telling Michael, I tell him we took this bet. Phone rings. It's Frank. He's on the speakerphone. Frank, Chris just took $400,000 on Alabama, and Frank just, I guess we're rooting for Georgia. It's one of those things I'll always remember. And then once Frank says that, what's Michael going to say? Nothing. Yeah, okay. I guess we're rooting for Georgia.
And Georgia won that game.
I think he did win that game.
Won that game outright. That game.
I can't remember what year it was. But
if it was the playoff national title, it was 2 years ago in Indianapolis with Georgia winning their first title.
By the way, we're not taking $400,000 for anybody that walks to the counter. We had a history with this guy. He bet us those kind of things a lot, and wasn't. Well, I mean, I don't want to say he wasn't a wise guy. He's been $400,000. That's a pretty big bet. But he wasn't like a number mover or anything like that. Just a guy making a bet.
Let's go to the Sun Belt, guys. I will just preface this. I have no opinion on this game at all. Troy hosting Appalachian State. NCAA, thank you for not allowing James Madison. Now you get this game instead of actually what would have been a really fun one with the Dukes and Troy. But credit to the Mountaineers. Remember, App State is the only one who beat James Madison this year. They did it in Harrisonburg. Chris, 5-point favorites. Troy at home, 53 the current total, and it has been one-way traffic on the Mountaineers in this one.
I got to tell you, I like the favorite in this one.
Mm-hmm.
My numbers came to 7. I think that they're a really good team. And, you're going through a couple of key numbers, even though it's only 2 points off what my numbers came to. But I like Troy in this one. I think that's a really good program. And listen, let's give Appalachian State some credit, too. They were an FCS team just a couple years ago. They've proven to be very competitive on a level playing field with some of the big boys. But in this particular game, I like Troy. I think they have a very, very good team, solid team. And I think they carry the day here. I think they're a deserved 7-point favorite.
I'm with Chris here again. I definitely lean to the favorite. I haven't taken it yet, and I'm glad I didn't because of that movement, and now I can get 5. But I like the under, too. I went under 52.5, and I think that's really because of Troy's defense, holding teams to 15.5 points a game. 5th best in the country, right behind Iowa. So that says something for them. They have had 3 straight overs, but that's because of their competition that they faced in the Sun Belt. So they had 7 unders before those 3. So 52.5 under is my play in that one.
I am steering clear. Maybe something in game. If you made me bet it, I guess I would lay the favorite just because of the way this line is shifted. Get it under 6 at home. And as you mentioned, Troy, very good on defense. The only team that really moved the ball on them this year was Kansas State. That was really the only team, and there's no shame in giving up points to that team, especially in Manhattan.
Absolutely.
And when you say App State, they kind of had their Super Bowl with James Madison. They were on game day, huge game, got up for that one, upset James Madison. So it might be a little.
I read a lot of good things about, and I had to look up his name because, it's me. Gunnar Watson is the quarterback for Troy, and I've read a lot of good things about him. And I'm looking at his numbers, but they're pretty darn impressive. And I don't know if doesn't sound like he's a first-round quarterback, but he's probably draftable at some point, and that's pretty good for a Sun Belt quarterback. So a lot of good things about him, but I like Troy, man. Like I said, I rate them pretty high, and I thought they deserved to be a 7-point favorite here.
Let's go to the ACC championship game, probably the most complex game on the board here. Tate Rodemaker is going to be a game-time decision, so that's a lot of fun for you there, Chris.
Wow, is that right?
Yeah, game-time decision. Of course, suffered, went into concussion protocol after the most obvious targeting late hit you're ever going to see from Florida. As soon as that play started, as soon as he started taking off, and I was on Florida in that game, I was like, they're absolutely committing a penalty on this play, and they did not fail. Florida did not fail in committing that penalty. Rodemaker, game-time decision, so it could be on to the third quarterback here for Florida State. Chris, you opened 5, down to 1. Again, it's not like Louisville's coming in well either. They're coming off blowing a second-half lead to Kentucky, and more importantly, giving Kentucky 38 points, which is pretty hard in all honesty.
I know all the money's on Louisville here, but I'd be very tentative. Now, I don't love either side. It's like you said, there's a lot of volatility. I'm going to drop another name here, another friend, who's been on, the old show and has stayed here at the South Point, Stanford Steve Coughlin. He texted me the other day. He says, well, what do you think about this game? I said, Steve, I don't know what to think because there's no team going into this weekend that has more volatility in their ratings than Florida State. First of all, let's assume Rodemaker plays and looks like a Division I quarterback worthy of being offered a scholarship and playing for Florida State. If he's that good, then this number probably should have been, 6 or 7. I don't know. But we don't know if he's playing. We don't know really if he's any good or not because, like I said,
no clue.
These are 18, 19-year-old kids. We don't know, So I think right now, and I told Steve, I said, I don't know what they would be, with a healthy, really good quarterback. I really have no idea, but we'll find out after the game. But I know what the committee's open for, a Louisville outright upset to take the pressure off them from putting in a damaged Florida State undefeated team.
If Rodemaker does not go, it will be the true freshman Brock Glenn, who we saw for a few snaps last week in Gainesville.
About him.
High-end recruit, obviously, Florida State, out of the state of Tennessee. I can't do anything on this game. And the thing is, Alex, I don't really like this Louisville team. I think they have been a product of a very weak schedule. And when you have a good coach and play a weak schedule, guess what? You rack up those W's. That's what happens in college football. And here they are at 10-2. I mean, they're 2 losses this year. They lost the rivalry game last week to Kentucky, where, again, they were up double digits in that game in the second half.
And don't think that wasn't a big game for them.
No, it's a huge game for them.
It's a monster game, yeah.
And their other loss was they were completely outplayed by a 3-win Pitt team. Completely outplayed by Pitt that day and lost outright. So I don't really like this Louisville team. I mean, all the way down to 1, you can't really do anything with this game now, unless if you know a lot about Mr. Glenn and say, hey, he's the guy we're going to lay the point with Florida State.
No, you are right. And so those are their 2 losses, but then they have 2 really good wins. They beat Notre Dame, who was number 10 at the time, 33-20, and they shut out Duke, who was ranked 20th at the time, 23-0. So they are very inconsistent, but I do think they'll probably get the win here. And Chris is right. The committee's definitely hoping for that. I like the under, though, because these are 2 top 20 defenses, and we have
47.
a lot of question marks at the quarterback position. I think Florida State will be cautious, run the ball more, protect the ball, not do a whole lot with either quarterback that they have in. And we know Louisville, they run as well. So
I can't. I wish I knew anything more than just what Brock Glenn did early in his high school career. Because if I had any idea that, hey, this kid is going to be half decent, I'd lay it with Florida. I'd lay the short money line with Florida State, lay the point. Because they're more talented. There's no arguing. I mean, on the outside, they're two wide receivers. I mean, Keon Coleman's amazing. They have great wide receivers on the outside. They have an NFL talent-laden defense. But if your quarterback plays that bad, and you mentioned it, to Louisville's credit, when they had played well, they made Sam Hartman look terrible in that game earlier in the year. It was Leonard for a little bit in that game against Duke. Shut him out. The game was never even competitive. So that defense has had spurts of being really, really good at a high level against good quarterback play. And then they've had what they had last week where they gave 38 points to Kentucky, who couldn't even move the ball the last 2 weeks.
I'm going to be very torn here at kickoff because for the future of the sport and what I'm looking at as a bookmaker and everything else, I want Louisville to win this game and get Florida State out of the mix. But as it is right now, I need Florida State big, because I opened it, whatever I opened, but all the money's been on Louisville right now. So, I mean, do I root for my money? Do I root for a better playoff? I don't know what to do, but, obviously they'll kick off and whatever happens, happens.
All I'll tell you is if Florida State does make the playoff, whoever they draw, be ready to move that number quickly on the favorite because they are going to lay it, and they are going to lay it quickly.
Yeah, it'll be double
on
digits.
The favorite.
It
doesn't matter who it is. I imagine to be Georgia and Florida State in the Sugar Bowl would be my guess. And Chris, I don't know if you can make that number high enough with the quarterback situation of Florida State.
So would you take 100?
No, I walked into that one.
Yeah, you did.
I walked into that. Yeah. But here's the thing, though.
Yeah.
If I'd said that the year with LSU and Oklahoma, I could have laid 50, and I still would have been okay in that game. With Joe Burrow and company that year. And I would have been okay with 50 last year with the Georgia against TCU.
Right, you would have been. Yeah, that's right.
Okay with 50. All right.
But my job is still to find that number between Pick'em and 100.
All right. So you know what? I'm happy you brought up 100 because there won't be 100 points in this game. There might not even be 10. No, there will be more than 10. Michigan, Iowa. Here we go. Big Ten title game. These two teams played in this game 2 years ago. Michigan smoked them in Indianapolis. Chris, you're at 22. It's 35.5, which, by the way, is the market high on the total right now. Yeah. I'll just be quick with my opinion on this game. I think Michigan's going to absolutely destroy them. And all this nonsense with Stallions and I hate to put the tinfoil hat on, but I'm going to for a second. I'm convinced that the only reason we know about this whole craziness in Michigan is because Ohio State lost to them in the last 2 years. And Ohio State was looking for anything that could have pointed towards that game not being kosher. That's the only thing I could have seen, Chris.
The guy's trying to save his job.
No, 100%. And then, of course, the funniest thing happens where Harbaugh's not even in the game. There's clearly no sign stealing, and Michigan beats him anyway this year. But, Chris, I just think that it opened up a whole can of worms for the positive for the Michigan program. I know that sounds weird, but they have taken that and they have motivated that team so perfectly. Everyone against us. No one believes in us. They think we're cheaters, all that stuff. And Iowa can't score. And the only opponent that was close to Michigan this year that Iowa played was Penn State. And that game was 31-0. And that was before Deacon Hill was playing quarterback either for Iowa. I think this is a rout. And I wouldn't be shocked if Michigan goes over the total by themselves. And Iowa doesn't even score, and we still get there on the total on the over.
Well, I made the number 27, so I'm with you. Yeah.
What 20? What you make it 27 with what on the total then?
29.5.
Oh, there we go. Fantastic.
Well, I'm not a totals guy. I've already told you that. So, I mean, I don't know. Do they score in this game?
So are you do you put team totals up for these college
I don't put
games?
up for the halves, but I put up for the game.
So what is Iowa's team total?
6.5.
6.5. So,
and I might be 6.5 under.
So I'll just bring Alex and I discussed this earlier in the week, and I know Frank brought it up as well. There are other books out there that have first half and full and second half totals. One book legitimately had Iowa's team total for the first half, a half, with the juice on the under in the first half.
And you didn't pound the over, I take it, right?
I can tell you, I did not even consider betting the over.
I wouldn't blame you. Yeah. I wouldn't blame you. You know, I do put team totals for first and second half on the NFL the night.
Right, of course, yeah.
But I maybe should have done it for these. But I mean, we put team totals for the game, and they're I think 6.5 under. So I don't know. I don't think they get in the end zone. Listen, they might make it to the 40 and kick a long field goal, and maybe even twice. But I wouldn't go any further than that. But I made the game 27. I think Michigan, I'd call that a blasting. Yeah.
I didn't do anything here, but I do think you're right. And I do think that has given Michigan a lot of motivation. Did you lay the 22?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I actually laid 21.5.
Okay.
I grabbed the better number. I mean, there's no difference between 21 and 22.
Not much.
There's no difference between 21.5 and 22. Fine at 22. If Iowa scores in this game, if Iowa scores 3, this game's going over. I mean, that's only like if Iowa gets a field goal by accident here. Let's say Michigan turns it over and Iowa gets the ball at the Michigan 10 and they go 3 and out and kick a field goal. This game's going over. Like that's all. Like I feel really good that Iowa gets 3. It's a cakewalk. I don't even have to watch. We're like, all right, Michigan get their 35-3. We're good. I don't even have to sweat. We're good. But no, in all seriousness, though, on Iowa, like the fact that team won 10 games,
unbelievable.
There's a few ways to look at it. A, what you just said, unbelievable to the positive. That they have no semblance of an offense and still won 10 games. And quite frankly, should have been 11-1 because one of those losses was that loss to Minnesota on that ridiculous fake fair catch that I don't think they should have called.
Right. Yeah.
On the punt return. And then the other way to look at it is how bad was the Big Ten West that they allowed this to happen?
I know.
that this team that has no offense won double-digit games.
Teams like Nebraska.
And Northwestern finished second.
Northwestern's going to be in a bowl game.
Yes, Northwestern 7-5.
Well, I don't know if that guy's coach of the year, but he's got to be right up there.
He was in the Big Ten. They gave him it.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
There are a lot of good Coach of the Year candidates this year.
Yeah, geez. Oh man, I expected. I thought Nebraska would be greatly improved this year. I thought Wisconsin. I went on. It might have been your show. I said early on in the year, if you're looking for a sleeper for a national championship, try Wisconsin because the Big Ten West is, pretty. I guess down. I would say, but they had a chance to maybe be in a playoff game. But they were terrible. Everybody was terrible. I mean, how can they let this kind of team make it to the Big Ten championship? So, but here they are. But but by the way, I'm going to shout out any Reno listeners. I spent almost 30 years in Reno. One of my good friends who's no longer with us anymore, but Paul Sonner, who owned Bully's sports bars all throughout Reno. His favorite thing was to bet favorite and under, big favorite and under. He says, because some of these favorites are just going to shut out that other team. And I texted a couple of my buddies. I said, I could see Paul betting this one, favorite and under, and thinking it's going to come 30-0 Michigan. I could see him doing that. And you know what?
Not impossible.
He might be right.
Not impossible. Hey,
right.
Look, 31-0 Michigan squarely in play here. I wouldn't shock me.
Yeah.
Also, too, Chris, 31-2 would get it done as well. That would get it done to the under.
You're bringing back memories of that 6-4 victory over Penn State.
Oh, man. I will say, of all the obviously, if Iowa pulls the upset over Michigan, oh boy, then the committee's got their work even further for him if that happens. But
there's very few things in this world I say is impossible, but that's
pretty darn close.
That's pretty darn close. Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we get back, we're going to the NFL, and oh man, there's some ugly ones in the NFL this week. But Joe Flacco's starting this week. You have to be excited about that and much more when we get back. Sports by the Book, hour number 2 coming your way next.
South Point is also proud to provide a variety of relaxing amenities for the guests who want to be pampered. Soak up the sun and let your stress melt away in our lagoon-style paradise swimming pool. A relaxing getaway where you can bask in the desert sun and enjoy seasonal food and bar service poolside. And If you really want to escape, come to Spa Costa del Sur. From couple suites to a co-ed wet area, our spa caters to business and leisure travelers who want to unwind and elevate their senses. A visit to one of our spa's steam, sauna, or whirlpool treatment rooms will leave any guest feeling like they can take on the world. Our gaming amenities include over 60 table games and over 2,600 of the most popular slot and video poker machines. We have penny slots, including the popular Buffalo games, and real machines like Wheel of Fortune, Triple Sevens, and Megabucks. If you prefer video poker, try Deuces Wild, Double Double Bonus, or a variety of multi-denomination games. Or try your hand at one of the most popular casino table games in the world, Blackjack. Don't let the game intimidate you. Blackjack, also known as 21, is both easy and fun. And our dealers are always happy to assist. And the best part? Blackjack always pays 3 to 2. Next, check out the roulette tables. Roulette is one of the easiest casino games to learn, and so much fun to play. It's a favorite of both beginners and seasoned players. In addition to blackjack and roulette, our casino pit features over 60 popular table games like Baccarat, Pai-Gow Poker, 3-Card Poker, Ultimate Texas Hold'em, and Mississippi Stud. So get out of your room and come join in the fun.
Get those trees up. Get them decorated, like behind us here at the South Point Sportsbook. Every sport you can imagine on that tree right now. I'm Jeff Parles. Happy to be with you as always. It is Sports by the Book Football Friday. Alex White on the far side of the desk. Chris Andrews, Sportsbook Director, with us as well. Chris, another Chris. Good friend of ours, Chris Felica, the Bear. We had him on the show a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
A little bit of notes on Mr. Glenn, Brock Glenn, who could very easily be making the start for Florida State tomorrow in the ACC title game.
Yeah, besides being a good friend, the Bear is connected to college football as anybody in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And he just texted me, said the third stringer for Florida State would probably be second string right now if he didn't break his finger earlier in the year. They don't think there would be any drop-off if Glenn has to play. So take that into account. But I got to tell you, I thought Rodemaker looked pretty good. But again, looking pretty good and pretty decent big game against Florida, and then looking good in the conference championship game might be two different things. So going with the Bear, and Chris, thank you for texting that to us. So we appreciate the information and glad to pass that along. Listen, if that's being said, I kind of like Florida State in this game.
And again, I don't like either of these teams.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about it.
I know Florida State is a win away from being in the college football playoff. By the way, those luck rankings I was telling you about, Florida State was 5th luckiest in the nation this year.
Is that right?
So, again, no Oklahoma State, because Oklahoma State, again, whenever you're over your four wins more than your expected win rate.
Yeah, because it's not like you're expected 0 in those games.
Correct.
It's 50-50.
Correct, exactly. 4.2 more wins for Oklahoma State this year than what their post-game win expectancy was, which is, that is bananas. I mean, that's almost Minnesota Vikings of last year.
Oh, man.
Expectations.
See what happened to them this year.
Yeah. Well, again, poor Kirk Cousins. And poor my Survivor entry. Sorry on that one. Pour one out yet again. See, on that one. All right, let's go to the NFL. Oh, what a place to start. Bailey Zappi, let's go. Get going. Here against the LA Chargers, Patriots. You know it's bad, Chris, when the New England Patriots, can't even beat the undrafted rookie quarterback on the other side. And not only that, he only scored 7 points in that game.
Yeah.
Mac Jones was the worst quarterback on the field in that game. Ooh. And that's saying something.
Yeah, that's saying something.
So, Chris, the Chargers are going the wrong way. Last Sunday night was the perfect Charger game. It was the perfect Charger game. Their defense played great. Baltimore did next to nothing on offense, and the Chargers just found a way to lose the game because they kept turning the ball over, and that 18-play drive ended up with a fumble. It was the classic Chargers, and even more so if you had the Chargers plus 3.5. You knew that Baltimore was scoring once Zay Flowers broke through and he wasn't sliding down. You knew you were losing that as soon as that happened. Chris, you opened 6 on this game, which is a lot of points on the road with this Charger team. quickly down to 5.
And
then
the 5.5 first.
Yeah, 5.5
then
first,
5.
then to 5.
Yeah.
And then you've been toggling these last few days between 5 and 4.5.
I got to tell you, one of my absolute sharpest guys, and I made the game. I'm just checking. I think I made the game 6. I did. So it's not like I thought it was a number play. Just I saw. Listen, I have eyes. I saw what New England looked like last week, but I kind of know what the Chargers are too. But I still made the game 6. One of my absolute sharpest guys, and I always say I can't beat this rat. Anyway, he's made a pretty big bet on New England, and I'm trying to stay under the market no matter where it is. And you know what, Jeff, I can get barely a bite on the Chargers, even though I've been consistently half a point under the market. So, like I said, this guy's been beating my brains in the last couple of weeks, and I'm ready for him to beat me one more time with New England. But boy, look at this. I mean, this is a bad game. I mean, if the Chargers could get healthy against anybody, and I know Bill Belichick and all that, boy, whatever magic he's had has certainly been lost in the last year and a half at least. But I don't know if the Chargers have it in them to beat this team. I certainly hope they do because, like I said, I'm on the line here for a pretty nice-sized whack.
Go ahead, Alex.
I do have to ask you, isn't there support for the Patriots every week still with how the lines move?
One thing I've noticed over the years, and I mean, like I said, I've been doing this a long, long time. The wise guy, the sharpest of the wise guys, defense takes precedent over everything else. That they start with defense. Now they may go from there, but it starts with defense. Total's 40. That's a pretty low total in the NFL. And listen, even though we've seen New England offensively, their defense isn't that bad. So I think, like I said, just painting with a very broad brush. The wise guys generally look at defense first before anything else. But, that's not, I wouldn't put that in concrete or anything like that, but there's just an observation.
That makes sense. That's where I went with this. I did go under 40.5 here because of the lack of offensive production from the Patriots, and their defense has been pretty good. So they've had 5 offensive touchdowns in their last 4 games, the Patriots, and averaging 13.5 points, 10 in their last 3, and then they managed to score 3 against Tommy DeVito and the Giants. So if we can keep that trend going, Jeff, I hate to say I told you so, but last week, Chargers, I was like, I learned my lesson a long time ago. I'm not betting Chargers.
Look, that's the last time I bet on them this year. I just can't do it. Whatever, they are what they are. I will say, though, I don't think there's a much more perfect way for Brandon Staley to go out. If they lose this game to Bailey Zappi in New England as a road favorite, to fall to 4-8 with a team that it's always been the thing with the Chargers. We know they're loaded with talent.
Yes.
We know this. We know that.
They have been since Schottenheimer was there.
I mean, look, for 20 years, this has been what they are. They are an immensely talented team that manages to get as little as humanly possible out of that talent. So it would not. I didn't bet this game. It would not shock me one bit if New England wins this game outright. Would not shock me one bit. If you made me bet it, I'd bet it the way Alex did. I think this feels like an under game. The Chargers defense actually has played all right the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Hasn't been their fault the last few games. But New England, boy, it is really unfathomable that the Patriots look as bad as they have. But it's the end of the road. This is it. And also, too, Belichick's going to be coaching his Charger team next year. Let's be honest with ourselves. Like, he's going to be coaching that team next year.
You think so?
Absolutely.
Wow. You got that glass onion there where you're looking at that crystal ball.
It makes too much sense.
Okay.
They have the quarterback. They need help defensively.
Yeah.
He gets to live in L.A. Doesn't have to deal with those cold winters anymore in New England.
What's he going to do with that hood? Well,
You know what? Remember, once you move to a warmer climate like here or California, once it hits 55 degrees, it's cold again.
Oh, freezing. Yeah.
I mean, that's all it is.
2 comments, though, I want to make on this game.
Please.
First of all, I thought that Moore was really going to help Herbert this year and really move him up. And I think Herbert's been okay.
He's been fine.
Yeah, he's been okay, but they still managed to find ways to lose. I thought O'Brien was really going to help Mac Jones. But neither. Well, I wouldn't say that about Moore. I thought Kellen Moore did pretty good with Herbert, but I just think Jones doesn't have it.
I think Matt Patricia just damaged him so much last year because he was and again, we know McDaniels can't be a head coach in this league. We know that.
Yeah.
But Mac Jones was a Pro Bowler his rookie year.
Yeah.
Like, he looked legitimately good for a good chunk of that rookie year. And he's regressed to the point where I'm not even sure I'd take him over Zach Wilson.
I'm not sure he's going to be on a roster next year.
That's for both of those guys, in all honesty, Jones and Wilson. I mean, it's crazy how far Mac Jones has crumbled in just two short seasons.
I mean, I followed O'Brien nationally when he was at Penn State. He made Hackenberg a second-round draft choice.
Another great one, New York Jets. Well done there. Well done.
I didn't mean to rub salt. He was my quarterback too, though, Jeff. At Penn State.
So bad.
So anyway, but he made Hackenberg look like a pretty good quarterback.
Yeah, he looked like a good college
quarterback. And then let's not forget Watson thrived under O'Brien in Houston.
Well, not only that, he made Matt McGloin into an NFL quarterback.
He made Matt McGloin into a
quarterback. Matt McGloin played NFL games.
The guy had he had like a 4-year career.
Yeah,
I think he's coaching somebody now.
Yeah, he's coaching for someone now. Yeah.
So I mean, I thought he could really listen. I think it just comes down to Mac Jones doesn't have it.
It's more than possible. It's just
it's early in. I think Bart Scott on Get Up used to call him mac and cheese. He said in the beginning he doesn't have any arm strength, and almost every quarterback that gets drafted in the NFL has arm strength. Now, there's some that are better than others, of course, but he said in the beginning, this kid just has no arm strength. It's kind of looks like it's come to fruition.
Let's move on to the next one. New Orleans hosting Detroit. You guys have the market high on this game with the Lions, laying 4.5. By the way, I mentioned this the other day. The Detroit Lions still with more wins in the 2023 calendar year than the Detroit Pistons. Not good.
They
Pistons,
they covered.
They almost won yesterday at Madison Square Garden, but the Detroit Pistons had less wins in the month of November than the Texas Rangers. Texas Rangers had 1. So not a good month for Detroit.
Man, you got a lot of facts stored up in there.
Twitter was having a ball with that last night with the Pistons. That's why I got them all. Chris, 4.5's market high on Detroit. It's mostly 4 now. 47. I'll say this. I'm very worried about Detroit's defense because this is now a few weeks running now where they've been unable to get pressure, and boy, that secondary's just gotten destroyed when quarterbacks have had time against them.
Yeah, I made this game 3.5, so I don't really like anybody in the game, but I got bet up to 4.5. I mean, I'm just following the action. I didn't particularly like, and I'm looking around. Yeah, I am at the market high, but that's strictly with money. And it's public money. So we talked about the public doesn't always lose. I kind of hope they lose this one because it's been public money that's moved me up to 4.5. But I'm waiting for some play on New Orleans, and I haven't gotten it yet. So we'll see what happens. But I don't particularly like the lines. I'm just moving the direction with my money.
And the Saints are pretty banged up, both sides of the ball. I don't know if we've heard about Chris Olave yet, if he is going to play. But what Jeff alluded to, I like the over in this. I haven't played it yet. I'm going to look deeper into if I'm going to go over in the first half or over in the full game. But the Lions defense, they have been struggling. And while the Saints have been struggling offensively because they were in the red zone 5 times last week against Atlanta and did not score once, the Lions' red zone defense is not great. So I think Derek Carr will find some success there. And we know that the Lions can score as well. Their offense has been pretty good.
Olave was a full participant today. Hasn't cleared protocol yet, but usually when it's a full participant on Friday, you're probably getting cleared on Saturday morning for that one. I gotta find this real quick because if you want an incriminating Derek Carr stat, I have it. I just have to find it real quick. Where did it go? Regardless. So, there we go. Since 2000, here you go. The New Orleans Saints are the only team to have 17 consecutive seasons where they're converting more than half of their red zone drives into touchdowns. That was 2006 through 2022, coinciding with Drew Brees and Sean Payton going to New Orleans.
Makes sense.
This year, they're 4th worst in the NFL, 42.5. That is a Derek Carr stat if I've ever heard one. And I just keep watching that team. Alex and I were in here watching that game with close eyes last week. I had the miracle Falcon first quarter bet. Thank you, pick 6, coming back the other way in my favor on that one. But I just don't understand why that team can. I know they paid him a lot of money, but Jameis Winston is better than Derek Carr. I don't think I know Jameis has his flaws. He's a turnover machine. That 30-30 season in 2019 is never going to be replicated by anyone in all likelihood. But Jameis Winston's better and gives them a better chance to win than Derek Carr at this point in his career. I just don't think – I think you mentioned it with Mac Jones that he just doesn't have it. I don't think Carr has it anymore.
Yeah, who's the coach? Allen?
Dennis Allen.
I don't think he has it either.
Oh, I don't think he's ever had it.
Yeah,
personally.
I don't think he has it either.
To the point with Derek Carr, too, that we've been talking about how teams play for their quarterback and connect with them and like them, right? Like Tommy DeVito. The Giants decided, hey, we're going to back this guy. We're going to win some games. Derek Carr just hasn't ever really had that, has he? I mean, of course he had.
For a short period of time with the Raiders, I would say he has. But I mean, look, I mean, they scapegoated him last year, which, look, he was part of the issue, but pretty obvious who the main issue was with the Raiders last year.
You have to say that, yeah.
But, it's not it's a valid point for Carr on that for sure. All right, we want an inept quarterback play. Boy, I got it in this next game. The Falcons are road favorites at the New York Jets. Desmond Ridder, Tim Boyle. Oh, boy, what a game. Lowest total on the board at 33.5, Chris. I'll get my piece out of the way here. It is embarrassing that the Jets are starting Tim Boyle again this week. They should be starting Trevor Siemian, who at this point, you have to ask the question, where Trevor Siemian's been on this roster for 9 weeks now, and the Jets have continually trotted out two guys who are not NFL quarterbacks in Wilson and Boyle. Begs the question, how washed is Trevor Siemian at this point? With that said, in this game, Chris, when it was at 3, I thought it was a reasonable take on the Jets. Mm-hmm. I just don't think Atlanta should be a field goal against basically anyone other than Carolina on the road at this point. And this game is going to feature turnovers. Whoever turns the ball over deeper in the other team's territory, that's the team that's going to end up losing, who gives up points off of their turnovers in this one. I think it's a close game. I think the total's right, though, that ridiculously low.
Well, this is the one trend, and trends drive me crazy.
Sure.
Yeah, but this is the one trend I follow. You go from a home dog to a road favorite. And I always say, games are decided on the field, but prices are decided elsewhere. And right now, and I'm at 2.5. I'm at the market high, actually, because I got a lot of money on Atlanta, and that's why I went to 3 earlier in the week. So I got a lot of money on Atlanta. Now, by the way, that's that trend that I gave. It's not 100%. It's not, but it's in the 60s, which is a pretty good trend. But I think you got to like the Jets here just on that one simple trend right there. How can Atlanta be a road favorite? I mean, they just don't deserve to be a road favorite. And I mean, nothing, my numbers come to 2, Atlanta 2. But again, I wrote down on my sheet, home dog to a road favorite. That's a bet against. And just on that principle, like I said, I think that price got overinflated by a lot of people, including me, making them the favorite this week. So I think get the Jets on a decent money line or 2.5. I mean, total's 33. That game could land 1 or 2.
Final score 9-6. Alex.
Hey, I'm looking at under in the first half, but I did see 16.5 here. I'm going to check other places and see if there's any 17s out there, because both of these teams in the first half, Atlanta averaging 8 points. That's 26th in the league, and the Jets averaging 6.9. They also have very good defenses. We know this about both of them, especially Atlanta isn't known as much for their defense, but it's really their red zone defense that's good. So they allow teams to get to that 20 mark, and then they really hold them there, third best in red zone defense. Field goals, maybe, going over in a prop like that between these two teams, or maybe on.
Well, Younghoe Koo, I forget which book it was. I want to say it was MGM. Younghoe Koo over 1.5 field goals this week is the most bet prop for Sunday's game.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
I did not even see that.
Yeah, I could see that as well. Also, the Jets have 70% of their points off of field goals this year, which is there are a lot of pathetic Jet offensive stats. I think that one takes the cake.
Wow.
Now, with 70% of their points coming off field goals.
Alex,
so far
just to let you know, I see 117 in the market.
Okay.
Unders minus $1.47. So how much juice you feel like laying for that half a point? I don't know.
Let's go to your Steelers next.
Okay.
This really actually sets up really nice for Pittsburgh. A legitimate stretch here where you come back, where the Steelers come back home after that win. Finally, they did it. Canada gets fired 400 yards. Whoa, we did it. We did it for the Steelers. Somehow only scored 16 in that game.
I know, yeah. It's yin and yang.
Which was the bare minimum. Yeah. The 16 was the bare minimum they could have scored in that game, and they managed to. But they won. They got the division road win. Now they go home and they play two of the three worst teams in the NFL back-to-back. They play Arizona this week. They get New England on a short week next week. Chris, you're up to 6.5. There is a bunch of Pittsburgh action earlier in the day today to bop this from 5.5 to 6 up to 6.5. Total 41. Chris, all I'm going to tell you is I have absolutely no interest in laying that many points with Pittsburgh against anyone.
I agree with you, but I couldn't take the dog in this one. But I would tell you what,
I agree with that.
When the money line is reasonable. Let me see what I'm running it here. I'm running at 280. I got money on the dog. I don't know. I mean, I think this should be at least $3. I got to say, I don't see the Steelers losing this game at home. Now, when they cover the 6.5, you'll probably be life and death if you lay at 6.5 when it's sitting at 10-7 in the fourth quarter. But I kind of like the Steelers to win. I don't know if I'd like them with the number. Gun to my head, I'd probably lay the 6.5. But Jeff, like you said, it's tough laying a big number with this team. But you know what? Even though they only scored 16 points last week, they did look better. They had a little bit of a bounce in their step. I think Pickett, and I've never been a huge Pickett fan, even coming out of college, but I think right now
he looked good last week.
He looked pretty good. Let's see how he does with a new offensive coordinator. Just the whole team seems better connected. And they, like I said, they threw the ball down the field. They threw the ball to their tight ends. It's like Canada forgot about tight ends.
Yeah.
That's like the big trend in the last 10 years in the NFL, and Canada completely forgot about it. I don't know. So I kind of like the Steelers in this one. Be very careful laying the points. If you really are desperate, I would lay 280 on the money line. And by the way, laying 280 on the money line is probably better than having it in a 6-point teaser, because that's about what you're laying. And then you got to, of course, hook it up to another team.
Right.
So I did lay 5.5 with the Steelers, just half a unit play early in the week. Great in game though, because if Arizona goes up,
you and I were talking about this last. I don't remember if we were talking about this on Monday or we were talking about it off the air on Sunday. Arizona's really bad in the second half.
They are actually dead last, second half points, averaging 6 a game and 2.5 on the road.
So they've been dreadful in second halves of games. This is one of those where if this game's tied at halftime, I agree with you. I would look to maybe lay. I mean, it'll probably be 3.5 at halftime if it's a tie game, more likely than not. I'd rather try to find a 3, but knowing how that game landing 3 makes a lot of sense, and everyone's going to want to lay the favorite if that game's tied at halftime. So, but yeah, if you can get Pittsburgh less than a field goal at some point in this game, I'd consider or field goal or less. Yeah, I'd consider doing that on an in-game scenario. But pre-flop, no, thank you. Survivor though, if you're in Survivor pools, that game and the one we're about to get to here, I think, are your two best bets this week, and that's Tampa Bay taking on Carolina next. Oh boy, I can't believe how bad the Panthers are. I knew they weren't going to be that good going into the year, but the fact that Frank Reich got fired, the fact that it feels like at this point that Tepper is going out of his way to say, hey, we had a trade in place for number 2 to get C.J. Stroud, not number 1 to get Bryce Young, and then, of course, backtracking like, we all are in agreement on the pick. It is a disaster there. It is an epic disaster there with the Panthers, and I don't think it's a quick fix because you can't fire the owner, Chris. We know that old trick. You guys are market low on this game, though. Tampa at 5. It's mostly 5.5 in the market. 36.5 the total. I don't like laying points with teams that I don't think are any good, but I don't mind laying it with Tampa. And I know it's against what the market has done, but I just think Carolina, I don't think there's a bop this week from the coach getting fired. I just think it's such a dysfunctional mess down there that it's going to be a long month to get to the end of the year for the Panthers.
2 things I want to say about this game. First of all, Frank Reich got fired and was effusive in his compliments towards Tepper. He's getting the full amount of his contract. It's like 30-some million. He's still getting paid by the Colts.
Yeah, it's a good gig, right?
He has gotten this week's Jimbo Fisher Award for doing nothing and making $50 million. That's
pretty good.
About what he's going to make. And I think he's free to take another job.
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
Michael Gone, are you paying attention? I'd love to get that contract. I'd still stick with you, Michael, for $30 million. I promise you I wouldn't go anywhere. The other thing, I spent a couple years in finance.
Sure.
And when the market would be dropping, whether it be overall market or, on a particular stock, and then all of a sudden it would bounce back up. We called it the dead cat bounce. I see a dead cat bounce this week out of Carolina.
Okay.
You know, I would be now. Again, am I running to the window? No. But I'm recommending, because we still have Tampa alive in our Survivor, and I'm telling them don't play Tampa. I mean, I'm just afraid of Carolina. You know, and again, every game is different. But we saw what happened with the Raiders.
Sure.
When they got rid of, what's his name?
With McDaniel.
With McDaniel. We saw what happened with the Steelers when they got rid of Canada. You know, the teams are basically the same, but the teams just have a little different step, bouncing their step. Are we going to get that out of Carolina this week? I don't know, because they seem to like Frank Reich. I mean, he did not do a good job here, but I think it really was upper management's fault, and I think a lot of the players probably understand that. You know, so I'm looking for a dead cat bounce out of Carolina. I don't know if they can win this game, but I have a feeling on this team that they're just going to play a little bit better this week. So I would steer clear of that one.
No strong opinion, but I do have to agree with you. I don't think they disliked him that much. It wasn't like the Josh McDaniels with the Raiders, where you could clearly see that they wanted him out of that building, and then they were playing for themselves. So I don't know how much we're going to get from the Panthers here, because they've just struggled offensively the entire season. And Tampa Bay really needs this game. I mean, they've lost 6 of their last 7, but the last 5 they've done better. They've covered in 4 of the 7, so they've hung in there. I think it's a game Tampa needs and will get. So a little different there, but I'm not running to the window to lay the points with this Buccaneers team either.
Yeah, Tampa's in a stretch here where they're going to be an underdog against Jacksonville at home.
Yeah.
They'll be an underdog in Green Bay as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll be an underdog next week against Atlanta. But I just mentioned 2 games that they could very easily win. If they went to Lambeau and beat the Packers, wouldn't shock anyone.
No.
They went to Atlanta next week and beat the Falcons, wouldn't shock anyone.
No.
So they're 4-7. They're not any good. They're still alive in that horrible division.
Yeah, in that division,
which,
sure.
Again, Atlanta leads going into the weekend with a negative 19-point differential and a 5-6 record, thanks to their win last week against New Orleans. All right, let's go to Indy and Tennessee next. Colts are 1 on the road against the Titans. Tennessee has not lost a true home game yet this year. Their only loss was in a technical home game, was the London game against Baltimore, but we know that's a neutral site. You open Indy 2, down to 1, 43 to total here. Indy's in the playoffs right now if they started today, which is pretty amazing for what that team looked like going into the year. The fact that Anthony Richardson only completed 1 game this year as well, got injured in the third one, in the fourth one, I should say, his third start. But this kind of feels like a good spot to go against them. On the road, in division, against a team that has played very well in their own building, and Levis will be a lot more comfortable in Nashville as opposed to if this game was in Indianapolis.
I think I have the Titans rated higher than a lot of the market.
Okay.
Now, I made this game, the Colts, a half, which essentially is pick. Or, 1. Okay.
Well, not for whoever it was that bought that half point, right, Chris?
Oh, yeah. My Flash, he's not with us anymore. But Flash, if you're up there listening, we mention you as often as we can.
That's one of my 3 favorite stories of yours ever. It's so good.
It's so incredible. You can't even believe, but I was there to see that it actually happened. Anyway, I don't know. I'm with you. I don't give a lot for home field advantage anymore. Although I tell you the truth, I got to start reevaluating because I think home field is coming into play a lot, mostly, and I'm going to credit my friend Jeff Fogel who pointed this out. We have so many young quarterbacks in the league right now that are called on without that much experience, whether it's in college or in the pros, and they're called on to start, that the home field probably means a little something because of that. Mm-hmm. And, Levis is probably, as true as anybody to that. I mean, he's not hugely experienced in college, a little bit, but he hasn't been experienced much in the pros. So I give Tennessee a pretty solid home field advantage. So my numbers come to either, like I said, a half, so pick or 1. So no real opinion as far as the number goes. But I do kind of like Tennessee in this spot. I think it's a good spot for the home team to pull out a win against, really what's a very mediocre Colts team, even though at this point in time they are in the playoffs.
And no Jonathan Taylor in this one, correct?
Right.
And so great points, Chris. Now I have to write down some notes because I haven't been giving a lot of home field. And rookie quarterbacks, and especially Tennessee, how they have been playing. Their huge point difference, 24.8 at home compared to just 12.3 on average on the road. I went over 41 in this one. It's kind of been Colts games over for me a lot.
A good number.
Yeah. So I think we're going to see scoring from both these teams. I do like what they're doing with Minshew, and then Will Levis will do better at home as well.
Yeah, credit to my friend Jeff Fogel. He pointed that out, and Jeff's
a lot of
really
sense.
Smart kid. He's 60.
You just pulled a Jimmy right there.
I pulled a Jimmy, but my wife gets on me all the time. She goes, "How do you know that guy?" I said, "Oh yeah, he's a good kid. How old is he? I don't know, 70." She goes, "Kid, I'm thinking 14." No. But Jeff's a very smart guy, very analytical. He's great at crunching numbers. But good writer too, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But he pointed that out. I want to give him some credit because I think he's onto something there. I really think it makes a lot of sense.
No, it definitely does. I mean, especially like just looking at Levis in particular. I mean, he was okay in that Pittsburgh start on the road. He was dreadful in Tampa, absolutely dreadful.
Yeah.
But in those home games, he was great against Atlanta. He was pretty good last week. It's been a considerable difference for Levis, at least at home there in Nashville. All right. I'm kind of surprised I don't have an opinion on this game because I feel like I have opinions on Washington games every single week. The Commanders hosting the Dolphins. Chris, 9.5 Dolphins favored on the road. Second straight week, they're big road favorites up on the I-95 corridor. 49.5 the total. I have no idea what to do with this game because Washington's they're both on extended rest technically.
Yeah.
Because Miami played Friday, Washington played Thursday. And Washington with 24 hours get up, not really a big deal in that. But that Washington team, they fired Jack Del Rio. They fired another.
We didn't see a dead cat bounce there.
No, I until Ron Rivera gets canned, I don't see this team doing much of anything. And the reports out of D.C. are that he's going to make it the whole year, and they're not going to do anything till then, which I think is a big mistake. Because you have Eric Bieniemy sitting there, who clearly deserves to be a head coach in this league. You're not keeping Rivera. Let him go. Let Bieniemy be your interim head coach and make sure he can do the interim head coach duties along with the play calling. And boom, there you go. You have your head coach. You don't even have to leave the building.
Don't have to worry about the Rooney Rule either.
Yeah. You don't have to do anything. It's your own guy.
By the way, aren't they all interim coaches?
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Until the owner decides
until they're like, all right,
you're
enough.
no longer interim.
Yeah.
I've interimed you. Anyway, I made this number higher, Jeff, but from the old show, I used to say diminishing returns. And anytime you're over 7.5, you really have to be careful about diminishing returns. So my power ratings come to 12 in this game. But, boy, you want to lay double digits on the road on it. And we're not quite the double digits yet. We're at 9.5. Might see double digits by post time. I do see 110 out there in the market. I'm kind of with you, Jeff. I don't have a strong opinion. My gut tells me to take the dog in a game like this, but not the easiest thing in the world for me to do.
Especially with a Washington defense that is capable of giving up a lot of points against good offenses.
A really good offense.
We saw last week with Dallas doing whatever they wanted. Granted, by the way, we haven't mentioned last night at all.
Oh.
I just want to bring this up.
I have
real
a couple
quick.
things. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Alex, we'll get to your thoughts on this Miami game in a second because I need to bring this up. There have been 5 regular season games that have featured no punts in it, period. 5 in league history. Mike McCarthy's been involved in 3 of the 5.
I saw you tweeted
3
that.
of
That's
the 5.
pretty funny.
How is that possible? and the most ridiculous part of that is they've been playing. In 2014, they were playing football for 90 years. Okay, it happened one time in the first 90 years of football, a game with no punts in the regular season. Of course, I know a few Chief fan friends of mine got on me for that Chief Colt game in the playoff where there was no punts in the early 2000s that the Colts won 38-31
Oh,
over
the Andrew
Kansas.
Luck?
No, Peyton Manning on the road.
Okay.
It was Dick Vermeil was coaching the Chiefs.
The Chiefs.
Yeah, I think it was 03, I want to say. It was either 03 or 04.
Yeah.
Early 2000s. Dante Hall had a kick return touchdown. That's the one memory I have on the KC side. But the 2014 Packers, within 4 weeks of each other, had 2 games with no punts in it, period. And the funniest part was the Bears, they did it to the Bears. The Bears had 17 points in a game with no punts, which is almost impossible, Chris.
Right.
But that game last night was ridiculous because the refs kept throwing flags the first 3 quarters.
Oh, my God.
Geno Smith was awesome until the last 2 drives.
Yeah.
They
couldn't block anybody on those
anyone.
fourth downs. By the way, so I was watching and they were talking about the field position on that last fourth down when they went for it.
Uh-huh.
I think the second to last possession.
Yeah.
I said, I agree. I said, field position, I wouldn't worry about field position. You haven't stopped them all night.
Oh, 100%.
What good's punting there? I know it's 4th and 4. How about trying to block somebody, though, to give him more than a second to throw the ball?
I actually thought it was the right thing because if you punt the ball there, first off, you ruin the no punt game, and that's no fun.
Okay, yeah.
But more importantly, you just mentioned it. They're never getting the ball back.
Yeah, you
The only way you're getting the ball
night.
back is exactly how it happened.
Yeah.
Where, again, McCarthy throws the ball on 3rd down when they're out of timeouts.
Unbelievable.
Like what?
Unbelievable. I mean, first of all, I needed to cover that game with Seattle. That's number
Right.
one.
So that worked.
But secondly, I mean, how do you throw the ball?
It was amazing. It was an incredible sequence by McCarthy. And then you give him the extra minute in a game where you weren't getting many stops either. But,
no, right. Yeah, it's not like I'm going to rely on my great defense.
They were almost
at
the point, Chris and Alex, where I would have 4th and 3 in a game where your defense got next to no stops. I wouldn't have kicked. I would have kept my offense out there almost. It's close. It's close.
It's close. I'm glad they kicked because I didn't want to touch on that. But I our friend Barry Phillips, who's done this show, he laid 5.5 on Dallas in the in game. Yes, because they're lining up like they're going to go for it. I can't believe they're not going to kick. He's looking to cover the 5 minutes. I was just relax, Barry. We'll see what happens. But anyway, that was very poor coaching on McCarthy's part.
Ridiculous. But I will say this with Dallas, and I made this point to Matt Hamilton, who we had on the show a few weeks ago. If Dallas is in the middle of this ridiculous stretch where they're playing all these great teams, they have the next 4 games: Philadelphia, at Buffalo, at Miami, Detroit. That's their next 4 games.
Yeah.
Dak Prescott plays well. And Dallas goes 3-1 in those games. Dak Prescott's going to be the MVP of the NFL this year.
I think you're right. Yeah.
And he has played more than well enough to warrant that. He's been better than Jalen Hurts, even though he's the betting favorite. Hurts is right now in most books, which I don't think is right.
I'm with you. He's very good.
But he has not been the best player in the league this year.
Not. No.
He just happens to be on a team with the best record, which, by the way, don't worry, we're getting to that game where I know there's been a whole lot of hoopla on that one from a lot of perspectives on that. Alex, to circle back, though, Miami, Washington, did you have anything there or no?
Absolutely nothing. I made Dolphins -9.5 and the total 50. So I stayed away, especially because you said the Commanders can give up a lot of points, but the Dolphins have a huge home field advantage, right? And play much better at home. So them on the road kind of makes me nervous.
Houston and Denver's next. They actually moved this game up for the purposes of giving CBS a real game in the 1 o'clock Eastern window. Amazingly enough, winner of this game they're in the playoffs as of right now. Winner of this game will be in. They both are at 6-5. Denver's done it with a lot of turnovers on the defensive end. Russell Wilson, I think, has played well enough, but not quite as well as people think during the stretch. I think it's more that just they're forcing so many turnovers.
Right, the turnovers.
And cashing in on them. Houston, C.J. Stroud's been awesome. But I will say this. I'm a little bit worried about Stroud for one reason in this game. He is turning the ball over recently, and he's seeing a defense that has been turnover happy the last 6 weeks. So, look, could it be one of those games where Stroud plays turnover-free football? Houston wins, covers as 3-point favorites pretty easily? Absolutely. But I would be a little bit concerned here with the way Stroud has been a little bit looser with the football over the last few weeks after not throwing a pick for that first 6 weeks stretch of the season.
I'm with you 100%. I made this game pick 'em. Now, I do know that Denver has capitalized on an inordinate number of turnovers.
They have.
Does that stop now? I mean, I know it's supposed to even out over time, but does that mean this week? I don't know. Against a young quarterback who's, been turning the ball over a little bit the last couple weeks. I got to tell you, Jeff, I've talked nothing but accolades for C.J. Stroud. I love the kid. I think he's fantastic. But, I mean, he's not Dan Marino yet. Let's slow the horses a little bit there. But I think they're a really good team, well coached. I think this is a team that's going to be on the rise. But right now, at this point in time, in 2 days, I think Denver's the right side here. And we'll throw one other thing out at you. This game's been a toggler between 3 and 3.5. Probably my second sharpest player has bet me every time I go to 3.5, he runs to the window and takes a 3.5. So I think he's given me 3 different $20,000 bets, and I got to respect that. This guy is double sharp. So that's another reason I think I'm on the right track here. I like Denver in this one.
I agree with you. I think the right side is the 3.5 with the Broncos. I didn't touch it. I'm pretty close my line, but I do lean to the under here, and that's mostly because of Denver's defense and how much they have improved. Yeah.
Alex, and just it's interesting because we were on opposite sides of the Houston game last week, where somehow the game stayed under with that Texans Jaguars game. Texans had a shot to win it. Amendola was short from 58, which again, if you're Houston, have an NFL kicker on the roster. No disrespect to Amendola, but we've seen enough of him to know he's not an NFL kicker. But I'm with you. I think this is one of those where Denver wants to play methodically on offense. They want to have these long grinder drives, and then they want to turn you over on defense. And that feels like a 24-20 game, a 21-17 game. And at 47.5, where this total opened in the mid-40s, I think that of all the bets in this game, the under is the best one to look at in this one. But I will say, though, when I've been betting Houston Texans game totals this year, it has not gone well for me. So I apologize in advance if I take you down with me on the under here, Alex.
Well, I think you're right. I think this number's inflated a little bit because the Texans their pace has been faster, and they've been wanting to play fast. So now against this Broncos defense, which, I mean, you've already said the numbers, but it is crazy. The first week 1 through 6 gave up 33.3 points. 7 through 12 brought that down to 16. And then the takeaways in weeks 1 through 6, first 6 weeks, just 6. And now they've had 16 in the last 6 weeks. That is insane what they've been able to do.
Is it purely coincidence? And I know like recovering fumbles is. But forcing turnovers, is that merely coincidence, or do you have to credit the defense at some point? I don't know. I'm asking a question. I don't know.
Well, I mean, look, there's a lot of fumbles are luck for the most part.
Fumble recoveries.
Exactly, yeah. Yes. Fumble recoveries are luck more than anything. Yeah, you got to give credit to the scheme. I mean, this is a team that gave up 70 points in week 3. I mean, let's not forget that. This team gave up 70 in an NFL game this year. And here they are.
Was it the Redskins Bears back in like 33 or so?
And again, it was that first game against Kansas City where the light went on for whatever reason. Because they gave 31 points to the Jets, which is basically 7 games worth at this point. But they turned it on. After that game with Kansas City, their defense has been great. They've been great on third down on defense as well. That's also spurred this for Denver's run back from the bottom of the AFC right into the playoff chase.
And Chris, your team is very good at takeaways too. That's what makes their defense really good.
Yeah, I think it's not purely coincidence.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some to it, but there's some that's not.
All right, Chris, let's go to it. San Francisco 3 on the road in Philadelphia. 47.5 the total. I could not help myself. I took the 3. I don't know how much I really like it, but it's just one of those where I do think the Niners are better. I agree with the power rankings, as you've said. I know you talked with Sammy P earlier this week, and you wrote about it on Fox Sports.
Yeah,
I do think the Niners are better. But to me, I have the Eagles as the second best team in the NFL. I may be higher than most on the Eagles because of their great record in close games this year. But if it's team 1 versus team 2, and I'm getting 3 with team 2 at home, it's an auto take for me. And if the Niners beat me, so be it. That's how I look at this from my perspective.
Yeah, I have the Eagles and the Chiefs kind of the same rating.
Yeah.
Niners number 1. And I told Sammy, my numbers come to the Niners 2.
Okay.
I mean, so at 3, which is really, that's the market right now. There's nothing, there's some 3 even money. But at 3, it's a take or pass.
Right.
I mean, I'm not, would you, beat down the doors to get to a +3? No. But I think at 3, it's very hard to lay that number. And listen, the Niners might win by 27. I don't know. But I think really you look just pure numbers wise, Philly at home, Niners, I do think is the best team in the league now that they appear to be fully healthy. I think you got to take that +3.
I'm with you. I took the 3 as well. And the Eagles are really good at home. And they get Lane Johnson back, which is huge for their offensive line. How come Brock Purdy is not in the MVP conversation?
So you know what? I was on with Philly Radio earlier this week, actually. We actually had this conversation on Purdy because I know this will come as a shock to you, Chris, but my friends who were on Philly Radio were stunned when I said Jalen Hurts should not be the betting favorite.
You're lucky they couldn't punch you through the phone.
I have a very good relationship with Sean Brace and John Jansen, not the lineman, a different John Jansen in Philadelphia. But they asked me who longer shot MVP. What would you look at? My first answer was I think Tyreek Hill should win the award anyway right now, but we know the voters are too dense to vote for a non-quarterback. This was before Dak on Thursday. But Brock Purdy was 14-1, 16-1. If the Niners win this game, and they're favored to, that race for the MVP, to me, comes down to Purdy versus Prescott. And it comes down to how those guys look down the stretch. I'm with you. I'm a little surprised that they've held back, that the market is not respecting Purdy in the MVP market. Mm-hmm. And we know how the voters refuse to vote for a non-quarterback now these days, Chris.
I got to tell you something funny. We were watching Get Up this morning.
Okay.
And I think Caesars, they always quote the Caesars line. I think had Purdy 12-1.
Okay.
And my wife looked at me and goes, how can Purdy be 12-1? Honey, it's a vote. What can I tell you? I don't know. It's probably about the price that he should be at this point. But, I think you make a good point. If they finish the league as the number 1 team, even regardless if they're the number 1 seed or not, I think if they go in,
if they're the number 2 seed in the NFC,
if they go in as the best team, apparently best team, I think Purdy's very much alive. I don't know if he'll win it or not, but he's going to be very much alive.
Yeah, I really do think at this point, if San Francisco wins on Sunday, it is Purdy and Prescott down the stretch. If Philadelphia wins, and if it's another one of those close games and people are not enamored with how they manage to win despite the fact that they keep winning these games, Prescott and Dallas, by the way, next week, that's the matchup, Philly and Dallas.
Yeah.
There are going to be a lot of people betting Dallas next week if Philly finds a way to win another close one this week.
Okay, but you mentioned the last 4 games for Dallas.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, could they be 1-3?
They could go 0-4.
They could go 0-4.
They could very easily go 0-4.
You could rip up your Prescott tickets at that point. I mean, that's 4 tough games, and I don't. You said if they go 3-1, that's a big if. I would say
it's a huge if because they're gonna. I would imagine even with all Buffalo's problems, Buffalo will still be a small favorite against Dallas in Buffalo.
I think so.
And Miami should be a small favorite at home against the Cowboys as well. So that's 2 games to a dog. They'll be favored against Philly next week in Arlington. They'll be favored against Detroit in Arlington. So, I mean, it could be 4 coin flip games for all we care
easily
at this point. All right. Joe Flacco starting. There we go. Confirmed earlier today. Flacco gets to start with DTR, not yet cleared out of concussion protocol, which begs the question, boy, what has happened to P.J. Walker? What a demise for him all the way down behind Flacco. Chris, you're one of the few 3.5s that are in the market on L.A. Rams.
Not for
now.
long. As soon as we get a break, I'm calling in. Because I wanted to go to 4 earlier. Jeff, I'm flooded with Browns money.
Oh, then go to 4 then, yeah.
I said... we, by all rights, I'd probably be at 3 with this game. But I told him, I said, should we go to 4? And we're looking. I said, we have so much money on the Browns. So we probably should take a bet. But now I'm looking at the market. I don't want to take a bet. I'd rather let me have the Rams going for me here in this one.
I really have nothing on this one with Joe Flacco going in. I know the Browns have an excellent defense, but I haven't really been able to read the Rams all year long. So no feel for this.
All I'll say is you and I had this discussion a few weeks ago off the air, Alex, where one of these bumbling NFC teams that was at an ugly record about 3 weeks ago was going to make a little bit of a push. And it sure looks like the Rams and the Packers are the 2 candidates that are making the push in the NFC to possibly sneak into the playoffs. I really like the Rams, especially the 3.5s that are out there. I think this is a great matchup for LA because we talked about this with Cleveland. Cleveland's defense at home is the best unit in the NFL. Cleveland's defense away from home, pretty darn average. This game is in L.A. Flacco can still spin it a little bit. Can't move.
Can't move. No.
Aaron Donald is going to have a nice day, as he always does. That is not the guy I want going against Aaron Donald. So I like the Rams. Four I still think is fine on LA as well. I think this is a multi-score win for the Rams, and Cleveland is hoping DTR's out of concussion protocol the following week.
Well, let me back up for 1 second here. Like, I've said oftentimes it's counterintuitive. You want to take the 2.5s.
Sure.
Obviously, you want to get the 3.
Of course.
But you want to take the 2.5, like in the Jets game, and you want to lay the 3.5s, like in the Rams game. It tells you you're moving away from that key number. Kind of tells you, do they win all the time? Obviously not. But it kind of tells you where the smart money is, one way or the other.
Let's go to Sunday night, Kansas City at Green Bay. You know what? I got to give the Packers a lot of credit. I thought this was a lost year. I thought Jordan Love stunk. I thought, back to the drawing board. Here we go. But the last 2 weeks, they beat the Chargers in the game the Chargers chargered in. And then on Thanksgiving, which was a total false hope for you guys behind the counter there, Chris, the greatest result possible to begin the week. Heading in and
started off great.
Started off great, and then turned into
next 2 days weren't so good.
Not so good after that. But Green Bay was clearly the right side the whole game in that game against Detroit. A 29-22 win outright, over a touchdown dog, win it outright. Now they return home to take on the Chiefs, who that really, Alex, you and I talked about it last Sunday. It just felt like the spot for Kansas City to get themselves straight. It took a while.
Yes, it did.
Down 14-0 right out of the gate. But the Chiefs won. They covered all numbers here in Vegas against the Raiders. Chris, you opened 6.5. It's down to 6. Casey laying in on Sunday night in Green Bay. 42 is the total. I don't have much of an opinion on this one. All this feels pretty good to me.
My numbers came to 6.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. No real opinion. I hope we have a great game that night. But I don't have an opinion one way or the other.
I'm probably going to look at first half and probably over because how Green Bay has been playing. They come out hot. We saw that on Thanksgiving Day. In their last 3 games, they're averaging 15.3 in the first halves compared to 7.5 that they were doing for most of the season. And then Kansas City, we know they like to try and get a lead early on. They're averaging 16.9 points in the first half, and they are second to last in second halves in points scored. So, that's been their biggest issue this year. That's why a lot of their games have stayed under the total because they're doing all their scoring in the first 2 quarters. But so I would look at first half over in this one.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's Kansas City was backwards in that game last week.
Yes, they were.
Because usually it's the 15-play script at the beginning of the game. They look like the best team in the world always. We know, again, when you have arguably the best coach in the NFL and the best quarterback in the NFL, yeah, that's going to happen. But they were dreadful early in that game. And then they turned it on as it went along. A second pass-catching option that we've been screaming for all year with Kansas City finally showed up in that game. Rashee Rice was great. And that's part of the reason they were able to do what they did in that last 3 quarters against the Raiders. I don't disagree with your total play there, Alex, because it does feel like a game where I think Green Bay is going to be able to move the ball. I think the Chief defense is taking the slightest of steps backwards as this year goes along. And I think the Chiefs script works out early pretty well in that one. And Green Bay really lived off turnovers early in that game to really push that game out of reach and make it very hard for Detroit to get back in it last week. Monday night, wrap things up with Monday Night Football, Chris? Jake Browning?
Yeah.
You excited?
Did you ever see his high school stats?
No, I did not.
His senior year in high school, he had 90 touchdown passes.
It's pretty good.
What, 9 a game? Yeah, I'd say that's probably okay. I'm assuming they played a 10-game schedule.
Wow,
yeah.
That's ridiculous. But
yeah.
So
you get a chance, take a look at his high school stats. They're unbelievable.
So Browning and the Bengals, it kind of looked like we expected last week. They had one good drive against a team with a good defense, and then didn't do much of anything. After that, it was just tough for them to move the ball against the Steelers. And now they get Jacksonville. It's been a while since Jacksonville's been a big favorite like this against the non-AFC South team.
Yeah.
8.5, 38.5 the total. You know what? This is a good test for Jacksonville for one reason and one reason only. If you're going to take the next leap to go from, all right, division winner, get a home game, win a home playoff game, and all right, you had a nice season too. Hey, this team is a contender that can make it to the Super Bowl. You come out and you smack the team with the backup quarterback in your own building. I think this is either a Jacksonville rout or this is Cincinnati might have the ball late with a chance to win the game, and we're really second-guessing the Jaguars moving forward.
We went to that the Niners-Jaguars game.
Sure.
And I remember that week. I love the Niners, but I remember saying, I love the Niners this week, but look for Jacksonville to go on a run after this. And so far, that's happened.
Yep.
Nonetheless, my numbers come to 7.5 on
Okay.
this game. So, now it's 8. Once you've kind of breached the walls past 7, where do you go from there? Is 8.5 enough? Is it you got to get to 9? You got to get 9.5. You got to get to 10. I don't know, but I'm kind of with you. I mean, I think if Jacksonville is going to be labeled a serious Super Bowl contender, they got to run this team out of the building. I don't know if they can or not. I think it's a little bit of a high number.
And Alex, for Jacksonville, this is at the beginning of the year. This looked like the stretch for them, where it was you're going to get Burrow in Cincinnati on the Monday night. You're going to go to the cold weather in Cleveland in early December, and then you're going to get Baltimore on the Sunday night after that. Obviously, it looks a little bit different with Browning, but it still plays the same. Taking the leap to being the legitimate contender, like Chris and I said, you wipe out a team with a backup quarterback.
And I'm with Chris. I have the number right there, but it's a great teaser spot. I might look to tease the Jags down to 2.5. Bengals defense is really bad. So it's not just their offense that's struggling now with Browning. Their defense is giving up a lot of yards, a lot of points in the last few games. So I agree with you. I think it's a great spot for the Jags and should be able to come out on top.
This will be a total what-if season for the Bengals. With the way that everything has happened around them, they just got caught in the mix. Your quarterback gets hurt. You're not going to win a lot of games. You're not going to be a competitor when a top-of-the-line guy like Burrow gets hurt. This AFC has been as weird as you could have asked this year, where Buffalo is down. Cincinnati's going to miss the playoffs. Kansas City is vulnerable. We have potential for some real anarchy in the AFC playoffs, which probably means they're going through Arrowhead Stadium, and the Chiefs will be here in Vegas in February. That's probably how that will end up playing out.
Or the Super Bowl colors might come to fruition with the Ravens and the Niners. I think the Ravens might.
Ravens
voodoo
Niners.
handicapping going on over there. Okay.
Ravens Niners. Is Jim Harbaugh going to come back and coach the Niners for Kyle Shanahan that day?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. So, all right, well, a lot of fun today.
Yeah.
A lot of fun today. A lot of good football. I'm off to Allegiant Stadium.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, good. You got to get out of here, man.
We'll go see the Ducks.
Where do you park?
Mandalay. Mandalay and walk across. It's just easy.
What's it cost?
MGM status, nothing.
Oh, look at you.
I can.
Pardon me.
No, I can thank my guy Mike Peranio for that over at Mandalay Bay. Runs this.
Thanks, Mike.
The only reason I have that is because of Mike Peranio.
I'll let you get out of here, but I was late. Did you make a bet on the Pac-12?
I did not.
Okay.
I did not. The only thing.
Yet.
So I'm going to the game with my wife. I can almost guarantee you we'll have some sort of overplay before we make it into the stadium. That would be my guess, because I think everyone's number is right at 9.5. We missed the 10, so we're not going to chase the bad number on Washington. But
I got a 10 right over there.
Oh, you got a 10 now?
Yeah.
Well, maybe I might take some 10 before I leave.
10 sitting right 10 feet from you.
All I will say is, when there's no real rooting interest, rooting for points is a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
You've been listening to the friend.
No, I've been listening to the friend. Well, and also, too, with Vinny, again, he's called the people with the defense out there liars the whole year. So you got to do that. Yes. Frank, you can bet unders. You can bet unders. Just remember that. All right, that's all the time we have. We'll see you again tomorrow, 8 in the morning. Alex and I are back previewing again. If you missed anything today, get it on the YouTube page, South Point Studio on YouTube. Shout out as well. Oasis here in town, Dom's Pizzeria, as always, and our friends on Buffalo at Steiner's as well. For Alex White, Chris Andrews, shout out to the crew, Sean, Jerry, Ryan, and I'm Jeff Parles. We'll see you tomorrow on Sports by the Book.